Hi, my name is Wim de Meren. Welcome to this video on stretching and mobility exercises for martial arts and self-defense enthusiasts. A little bit of background about me. I've been a personal trainer professionally for, about 25 years now. I've been training in martial arts and combat sports for well over 33 years. I also have a background as a combat sport athlete, so you could say that flexibility and mobility has been on my mind for several decades now. Now, that brings me to the focus of this video. The goal of these exercises I will show you is not to replace the stretching you already do. It is also not the goal to give you a complete stretching regimen for every single joint and muscle in your body. However, the true goal of this video is to try to correct many of the issues that I've seen martial artists and combat sport athletes develop throughout the years. Specific types of stiffness and lack of flexibility in specific joints and muscles. So I'm going to mainly target those. The goal is obviously to make sure that you can then become a better martial artist or a better combat athlete. Now, how should you use the exercises that I will show you? Try to use them to loosen up whatever is tight for whatever reason or whatever is hindering you in your movement. Preferably, you would take out 1 or 2 days a week and spend about 30 to 60 minutes on a variety of these exercises just to make sure that you slowly make improvements. Now, that might seem quite a lot, but try to view it more as a form of maintenance for your body and trying to improve the quality of your movement system, your muscles, your skeletal system, and so on, your joints, so that you can perform better when you train. So try to view it that way as opposed to a chore that you have to do because you really don't enjoy stretching. It is actually trying to prevent injuries and to improve performance in a more indirect way than just punching or kicking a heavy bag or sparring with a partner. We also have to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, because very often when I talk to martial artists about stretching, they only talk about stretching muscles. Now, that is obviously an element, one of the parts of mobility, but there's more. There are several factors. So the exercise that I will show you will involve the muscles, the tendons, connective tissue, but also the joints themselves. We want everything that we can make more mobile and flexible be involved, as opposed to only focusing on muscles themselves. Sometimes the exercises will be a little bit more geared towards muscles. Sometimes they will be a little bit more geared towards, for instance, connective tissue. But every single exercise is effective in its own right. The goal of everything we do today and of you training these exercises is not necessarily flexibility per se, but you actually want to improve your ability to move through a greater range of motion and or do so with less resistance. Now, that means that you can improve your body mechanics. Now, for that goal to be achieved, you do not necessarily have to become extremely flexible, but you just want to make improvements over where you are at right now. Now, what we want to have is create in all the movements that you do in your training a flexibility surplus as opposed to a deficiency. This means that if you have to move your arm or leg throughout a certain range of motion, that you are flexible enough to do so easily, which means that if you come to the end point of that motion, that you're not struggling because your body is resisting because of stiffness. So if you have a little bit of surplus in that movement, you can go at the very least towards the end of the movement, and you have a little bit of a buffer zone should you suddenly lose balance or for whatever reason open up the movement a little bit more than normal. That is how that flexibility will keep you safe and avoid injuries, pulled muscles or worse. Which brings me to the final point. If you have injuries, pre-existing conditions or anything like that, before you do anything that I show you in this video, consult your doctor first. The exercise I show you can help with certain conditions. However, what I show you is not meant to replace medical attention. So all that said, let's start with some principles. There are a few principles that you need to follow as you do the exercises. First of all, you want to be consistent and progressive in your training. Now that means that you do not overdo it and you give it time. Consistency means that you have to do regular sessions of flexibility work, otherwise it will be very difficult to make progress. Progressive means is that you go further and further into the stretches, trying to push yourself beyond your limits in a very slow and methodical step-by-step fashion. You don't want to push it hard right off the bat or go through extreme lengths to suddenly become flexible in half a day. Give it time, don't overdo it, and make sure that you practice regularly. The second principle is that you listen to your body. If it hurts, don't push it. Now, this means that we have to define what pain is, because martial artists in general, and especially combat athletes, they are used to pain because we get punched, kicked and thrown and choked out and so on in our training on a regular basis. So we have to define pain. The easiest way, though not necessarily the best way, but the easiest way when you are working on flexibility to determine what is pain and what is acceptable tension and discomfort is if you, for instance, feel as if the muscle or the part of your body that you are stretching or working on is getting stabbed by needles, or you feel as if it has a burning sensation, that's when you're actually injuring yourself. So you always back off then. It doesn't help forcing through those limits that your body is telling you that it has at that point in time. So you need to back off a little bit, give it time, and next time try again. Moving on to the next principle. Once you finish stretching, move. Once you finish your mobility work, don't just sit down or lie down in the couch. Try to make sure that you give your body a chance to figure out how to use that increase in mobility that you just gave it. This is true for a variety of reasons, from just the neurological pathways of your brain, trying to figure out how to connect everything again once that it's been loosened a little bit, changing movement patterns, and so much more. You don't have to do a hard training session, that is not what I mean. However, try to just move about a little bit for at the very least 10 to 15, maybe even 20 minutes after you stretch. This could just be walking around, going to the supermarket, doing some groceries, it doesn't matter, but don't just stop and lie down. An often forgotten aspect of stretching and mobility work is this. Newly stretched out muscle fibers are not as strong as those that are already used to getting lengthened to a certain degree. That means that if you stretch a muscle beyond the limit that it already has, very slowly, very gradually, that part of the muscle fiber is going to be relatively weak. I'm oversimplifying the science behind this just so you understand better. But the idea is that instead of doing, for instance, working extremely hard on trying to loosen up your hamstrings so you can do high kicks, and you spend 20 minutes stretching them extremely hard, pushing beyond your limits, and then you go to the heavy bag and practice for half an hour high kicks as hard as you can, you're very likely to pull or even tear a muscle then. So instead, work on mobility, but do those high kicks in a more controlled fashion and let your body recover from the stretching session first, so that these muscle fibers can slowly strengthen along with becoming more flexible. A final point is that when you do certain of, in particular the deep stretches, don't just jump right up. Try to come out of the stretch or the exercises slowly so that your body can actually figure out how to put itself in position again, so to speak. Your muscles are extremely elongated in certain stretches, or your spine might be twisted in a certain position. And if you move quickly out of such an extreme stretch, then the muscles and other structures involved can, so to speak, cramp up and lock everything up, or even tear and cause injuries. So always be careful when you stop an exercises. That said, let's look at some equipment that I'm going to show you. Throughout the video, I will be using different types of equipment. Some of it might be new to you, other equipment you might actually know quite well. Now, I'm going to start with the first one, and I will show it to you. This is a wobble board. So a wobble board is used for ankle stability. So you can see it in different angles. You can see that here it is a little bit thicker when you view it from the side, and you will put it on the floor and then stand on it and do ankle mobility exercises. So that is the first one that I will use. It is actually a quite effective tool that I can very much recommend, even if you already have a lot of flexibility, because it strengthens the ankles at the same time, which is an essential part of being a very performant athlete in general, but in particular a martial artist. Now the next one is what we call elastic bands, TheraBands. There are different kinds, different strength levels, but they are elastic and quite long. Now these can be used for also specific exercises and mobility issues that you might encounter to fix those. If you're quite strong, which is the case with many martial artists, those elastic bands aren't strong enough. And then we get to what we call power bands, which is the same thing. They are flexible, but they offer a lot more resistance. So this depends a little bit on your strength level, if you go for the one or the other, or maybe both. Another one which we have is the yoga strap. And this is just a piece of strap cloth basically, which has the D-rings here at the end, which you can then turn into a noose and use to hook wrist, elbow, feet, and so on to help you with certain exercises. This is very easy to find, or if you prefer, you do not want to spend any money on this, then you can most certainly use a piece of rope, or you could use a regular belt that you use to hold up your pants. It's not as comfortable, but it works quite well. Now, a final piece of equipment that I would like to recommend is a foam roller. Now, foam rollers come in many different sizes and different types and densities. Now, this is a very special one that I use. Now, you use foam rolling to actually make sure that you try to loosen up all the different layers of muscle, skin, different types of connective tissue, and so on. And it's a very particular set of exercises that you can do with them, which I will not show in great detail in this video. However, I will show certain exercises using a foam roller, and to make sure that you can also use this correctly, I will make an additional video which I will show on a special page on my website. To see that video and to also see all the additional pieces of equipment that I showed you, you go to my website. It's called wimdemeere.com, so my name, wimdemeere.com/mobility. So wimdemeere.com/mobility. That is a web page where I will show you links to where you can buy all these pieces of equipment, and at the same time show you a video of how you can use a foam roller. Now this is a special one. This is the one that I have been using for the past few years. I was diagnosed with compartment syndrome about 5 years ago, and it was a condition that I developed easily 10 years ago, and it created many problems for me. Now, this is a foam roller that is actually quite special because it has a motor unit on the inside and a vibrating core. So I'll quickly show you how it works. So this is actually vibrating at an extremely large frequency. What it does then is, if you put your body on there in certain ways and roll over it, like you would with a regular foam roller, then you can actually get an extremely effective result of it, of loosening up not only the muscles and tendons, but especially the connective tissue, which was the issue with me, that it was not very, let's say, not very functional anymore. So this is obviously a piece of equipment that is a little bit more expensive, but I can very much recommend it to you, making the investment in doing it. I can personally attest to the fact that it has actually done wonders for my body, and with many martial artists, because you are so strong, the muscles are very strong and dense, a regular foam roller often doesn't do the job anymore. So you could compare the electric foam roller here with something along the lines of a deep tissue massage. It's not the same thing, but the image might help you understand a little bit better what I mean. So that is what I wanted to show you as far as equipment goes. Let's move on now and try to look at 2 basic stretches that everybody should know. Now, the exercises that I will show you next are some of the most fundamental stretching and mobility exercises that I've ever found. They're called the Bretzel stretches, and they are exercises and sort of stretching and mobility work all into one, created by Mr. Gray Cook of the famous Functional Movement Screen organization, which I can definitely recommend to everybody. Now, I use them again extensively in my own training, and mainly I use them as either a warm-up, or if I do not have a lot of time and I want to do just some general stretching and mobility work that uses pretty much almost my entire body and affects a number of different structures. Best way to view these two exercises, and there are more variations, but I'm only going to show you two and the variations that I like best. But the best way to view them is as stretching or working on the mobility of a whole chain of different muscles and tendons and connective tissue and so on, as opposed to one specifically. So we're going to work mainly on, let's call it a movement chain, a connection of all different parts that are used for movement, and we're going to stretch them all at once, as opposed to separately. It can be quite difficult to do this correctly at first if you're not used to it, because you will very quickly discover where you are stiff or where there are certain deficiencies in your flexibility that you haven't felt before. So that is why I would always advise caution. Start slowly, don't push it, and make sure you work on both sides. Very often you'll notice that one side is a lot more stiff than the other, so work on that one a little bit more. But take your time to do it correctly, and again, don't push it. I'm going to show you the first one in different angles. Now the first angle is going to be sideways like this. This is just an easy thing to rest my head on, because you do not want to create tension in your neck and so on. You can use a pillow, you can use a rolled up towel, it's all good. But I'll use this here, and then you can see it a little bit better. The first thing I'm going to do is lie down on my side. I'm going to lie down on my left side to begin with, and rest my head on this pillow as if going to sleep. There's different ways of getting into the correct position, but I will show you the one that I like best. So I like to hook my bottom leg with my top leg, pull my bottom leg in, and I'm going to grab my foot. What I want to do next is from here, you see that my knee is pointing slightly forward. I'm going to pull it back so it is in line with my upper body. So if you are looking from above straight down onto me, what you will want to see is from my bottom knee throughout my body to my head, a straight line. That is what we want. And I want to pull the foot in as much as possible toward the buttocks. Now then I'm going to rest down my head and relax and pull everything tight. If you can't reach comfortably, you can use a towel or something else, or the yoga strap to hook your foot and pull it tight. That's perfectly fine. Now next thing I'll do is bring my knee up about 90 degrees in relation to my spine, or a little bit more would be even better. What you then do is use your bottom hand and you hook the top of that knee and pull it down, and then try to keep it there. For many people, me included, this is quite difficult to begin with. I have rather stiff hips after many of my injuries and surgeries, so it's quite a challenge. But this is a starting position. First thing you do, you breathe. And you relax. This is a stretch that will take a while, so you're going to be working on this for several minutes, so you don't need to force it or push it. That just doesn't work. Now the next thing I'll do is start to rotate towards my right side, and as if I'm rolling backwards. What I want to do is lower my right shoulder to the ground, if possible. If not, go as far as you can. I'm keeping my top knee, my right one in this case, as much as possible on the floor. I do not let my bottom knee slide forward and backwards. If your knee starts sliding forwards all the way, then you release the tension. We do not want to have that, so you want to make sure that you hold it as much as possible. So quick start over, grabbing my bottom foot and making sure I pull the bottom knee in line with my spine and head. Lie down, relax, bring the top knee up 90 degrees or even a little bit more. You can hook underneath, but I prefer overhand, grabbing the fold here of my knee, the bend of my knee at the back of the hamstring muscle. Pull it down and then breathe and rotate to the right. You go as far as you can and then you relax. The key is that as soon as you feel that you're starting to breathe shallow, you stop for there and then you breathe some more. And what you'll notice is that very slowly the tension will start to lift and you can rotate a little bit further. And this you keep doing until you go as far as you can. Generally speaking, what I like to do is do the exercise for about 4 to 5 breaths. So I will get into the position, start rotating, breathe in and out. Every time I exhale, I relax, and then I go a little bit further. And this for about 4 or 5 times. For me, usually that's enough to get to my limit. You might want to go a little bit further if you like. If you're extremely stiff on that side, maybe do it 6, 7 times. This is a little bit an individual choice, depending on your own needs. The main point is that you do not force it. You do not try to strain. You try to relax into the stretch as you pull your arm on your leg, on your bottom leg. You pull the foot down and you rotate that shoulder backwards. As you do that, you try to relax into it and you keep on breathing. The critical point is that locking your breath is what creates tension. Try to be relaxed and hold your breath at the same time. It doesn't work well. So that is the first part. Now I'm going to show it to you from a different angle so you see better. So I'm going to face the camera. And then from here, I lie down. And what I want to have is from this position, a straight line from head to toe. Now I will hook again, grab my bottom leg and then pull my bottom knee so it's in line with my spine. I grab my top leg with my bottom arm and try to pull the knee down and then pull my foot in towards the buttocks. And then I start rotating as I exhale. Inhale first, exhale, and turn. And here I relax a little bit and I can stay here if I feel tension and I breathe. And each time you exhale, you'll notice that you'll be able to go a little bit further. Now, what you should also try to do is keep rotating your head and looking to the corner of your eyes, in this case, the right corner, so that you keep on turning and trigger your brain into increasing the rotation. So I inhale, exhale, and I go further still. And this you would continue to do until you hit the end point. So to show you in a different way, so it makes more sense, imagine that you're in a half kneeling position like this. So what I want to have is about a 90-degree angle in my front leg. I want to have a straight line from my knee, my hip, through my spine, towards the top of my head, straight line. And what I'll do then is rotate. You're doing exactly this movement, but lying down. What that will do is give you a tremendous stretch throughout what we call the anterior chain, which is a series of different structures that are connected on the front side of your body. This is a tremendously effective stretch and warm up for whatever type of training that you want to do. If you feel tightness, if one side doesn't work as well as the other, that's quite okay. Just do the exercise again. If you feel deficiencies, you feel in your quads, in your psoas, in your lower back, it doesn't matter where you feel it, that is also an indication of where you might want to spend more time stretching with specific exercises targeting those structures. So this stretch is in and of itself a method to test your body and see where it needs some extra attention. And at the same time, it is also the cure, so to speak, of relieving those tensions because they get stretched as you figure out where the tension is. So that's the first variation. Let's take a look now at the second variation of the Breslow stretch, which is going to target what we call the posterior chain, which is the backside of the body. So again, many different structures are affected. I'm going to scoot this up off to the side. Okay, we don't need it. I'll show it to you again in different angles. So the first one is going to be here. I'm going to take out a little bit of, this is actually for the microphone, so I'm going to take that out because I'm going to sit down on it. What you want to have at first is here 90-degree angles, more or less. Again, this is a good average, it's a good way to start. If you can't do the 90 degrees, I wouldn't worry as much about it, in particular with the back leg. But what I will do is have a 90-degree angle here in my front leg and try to have a 90-degree angle here in my back leg. So my feet are basically almost aligned, and my upper leg here in back and my front shin, they're more or less parallel. These are just general guidelines to help you with this exercise. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky. It's a little bit different from the usual kinds of stretches. So this is going to stretch the backside. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to post on my back arm. So this is my right leg. I'm putting my right arm down. And then I'm going to try to put my left hand down at the same distance from my top leg. So this is a few inches away from my hips. I'm going to post down and put my left hand here next to it. Now what most people will have is that the chest will be at an angle first, as opposed to straight. And that is perfectly acceptable and perfectly fine. So I'll show this to you facing the camera this time. So what you want to have is my front leg here is pointing to the side when in relation to the camera angle, and that way it is perfectly positioned for what we will do next. My back leg is, as you can see, also pointing straight along the center line of the camera, and the bottom part of my back leg is at a 90-degree angle. So I have two 90-degree angles. Remember the half kneeling position that I showed you before. Imagine that you are doing this here, and then you collapse and sit onto your side, maintaining those angles. So that is a starting position. Then I'm going to use, if my left knee is in front of me, I'm going to use my left hand and put it here with the fingertips pointing away from me, put it down. Then I'm going to try to rotate my upper body and put the second hand down. Now the key here is what you try to do is just from here, breathe. And you relax. You don't fight it, you try to be as relaxed as you possibly can. Now the main thing you want to do is avoid bending this elbow to compensate. So what you try to do is lock this elbow. I'm not pushing, I'm not straighting, but don't let it collapse. If you let it collapse, that takes away the lines of tension that we want to create. It's quite tricky sometimes, especially if you're quite stiff in your spine. So I'm gonna straighten this out, put this here, pretty much on the floor, on a parallel line. And then you breathe. So as I mentioned, my chest will likely be off to the side. What I want to do is bring it facing the camera in the position that I am now. So my lead leg has the knee pointing to the side. You'll find pointing your chest at an angle quite easy to do for most people, but making sure you have a 90-degree rotation with your chest, that is the goal. You also do not want to collapse the chest. So you do not want to do this here, collapse everything. You want to maintain a high position with your spine elongated, like this. So that's the starting point. How long do you stay here? Breathe. You'll feel that if you want to lock up again and create tension, then automatically everything becomes tight and doesn't want to stretch. So you're going to have to spend enough time trying to relax into this exercise, so all the different structures release and stop being so tense. That takes a while. So I'll do that first. Inhale. And then the next thing I'll do is slide forward with one hand and then the other, and then I'm going to lower myself a little bit more. So that's the next variation. I breathe in and out, keep going, and then I do the same thing. I'll slide forward with both hands and go a little bit further still. I'm going to back up a little bit so you can get a good angle. So from here, I will breathe, inhale, exhale, and so on, and very slowly go lower and lower until I can put both elbows down. And in this position here, it's okay if your back leg starts to straighten out a little bit. You can keep it here, but if it doesn't want to and it slides out, that's not that big a deal. But if you can keep it, that's great. So I'm going to lie down on my elbows. Again, I'm not ducking down with my head, keeping my head in neutral, and I just try to breathe and relax. And eventually what you want to do is get your chest flat on the ground. Now, I'm not going to do this because that's going to give you a lot of crackling noise in my microphone here. So I won't be able to do it that way, but I'll quickly show it so you've progressed from this very high position, slowly sliding forward, more and more going down, elbows on the ground, and then you straighten out one arm, and I'll show it like this. And I won't do it for the microphone, but then you slide out the other arm as well, like this. And I'm going to try to keep myself upright so it doesn't crackle, but you straighten out two arms and go flat. So I'm not flat, I should be even flatter still, but then again, we're going to mess with the microphone, so I won't. So this is the end position. Turn your head to the side and you lie there. So very slowly, you're going to come back up again. Take your time, just slowly come back up, pivot out of it, and release. So that's how the exercise works. So very quickly, showing it to you from the side. So I try to make a 90-degree angle. Again, remember that half kneeling position, you're doing that, but you're sitting down. So I'm going to have 90 degrees here on both sides. If this is my right knee forward, I'm going to use my right hand and put it down, not very far away from my hip. Then I'm going to inhale, exhale, and rotate. I want to have my chest facing forward. At first it'll be at an angle, it's okay, just take your time. That right arm here, you want to keep the elbow straight, don't let it collapse. So from here, inhale and exhale. And you wait until you feel the tension ebb away a little bit. Walk forward with both hands. And you keep doing this until you can put the elbows down and then you lie flat on the floor. Now, one thing that helps with some people, instead of, this is my right arm, I'm going to use my left arm as I go further out, and I'm going to extend it off the floor. So I'm going to reach forward. So keep that arm straightened out here, but reach forward. And that tends to help for some people. You can do the same thing when you're lying down. So once you've managed to get all the way on your elbows, you can reach with that left arm. Inhale and exhale, and that's going to give you a quite significant increase in the stretch. So as I said, with these two bretzel stretches, take your time with them. You shouldn't try to force it. Take your time with them, relax, and most of all, breathe. You need to breathe. If you lock up, that's when everything goes wrong and you don't make any progress. So try to relax into it. It will feel throughout the different stages as if your body is locking up and you can't go further. Then you have to stay in that position and breathe in and out a couple times, and in most cases you'll feel that afterwards you can go a little bit further still on the next exhale. But you have to give your body time to unwind itself and relax into the exercise, as opposed to expect it to immediately do the right thing and relax and allow you to go further. Like I said, you can go to the resources page for this video, which is on my website, wimdemeere.com/mobility, and you will find a link to where you can get one of these. They're not that expensive and they're actually quite interesting to work with. So what you'll do is you put it down And there's a few exercises that I very much recommend you do for ankle mobility. So what you're going to do is sit down here. Well, sit, actually you're going to stand on it, and I'm going to have both feet parallel. I'm coming as close to the edge of the board as I can without actually going overboard. So this would be too much because now my ankles will fold sideways and collapse. So I want to make sure that I have my feet parallel, and then I try to make sure that I am more or less in the center of the wobble board, not standing too much forward or back or left or right, but that my entire foot is connected to the board. That's the goal. So there's a few ways that we can work on this for ankle mobility. So what you'll do is lock your knees and then go straight forward and straight back. So this is difficult. Straight forward, straight back. You don't want to roll just yet. This is a circular movement. So we're not going to do that right now. What we're going to do right now is straight forward. So I'm going to flex, straight back and stretch. So you're going to, as if you're standing on tippy toes, and then you go straight back onto your heels. Keep your knees locked for now. So I'm going forward and backwards. So if you watch this from a side angle, it will give you this view. So you start easier, it's easiest to start with your heels raised. So on your toes, stand up straight, lock your ankles, roll back onto your heels, and then push forward again. So this is an active stretch and working on stability, but mainly mobility of your ankle joints. Many people have rather stiff ankles in martial arts unless you stretch them really well. So that is one of the reasons why you want to do this exercise. The next one that you're going to do is a little bit different. You're going to lock your knees as much as you can, but it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to lock my left knee and bend my right knee a little bit. So if I lock my left knee and straighten out, you'll see that my ankle on the left side rotates a little bit, gives a little bit of a stretch. Then I'm going to straighten out my right leg, bend my left knee a little bit, but I'm keeping my feet forward, and I'm going to the other side. And that is what you're going to switch, just relaxed, switch to both sides. You don't have to push, you don't have to lean, just do this very gently, and then go from one side to the next. Making sure that you lock out your knee, you straighten out that leg fully before you switch. Make sure you also don't let your hips travel out, because that's going to make it a little bit more of an off-balance position. So just switching from one side to the other, transferring weight, straightening one leg and then straightening the other. So that is the second exercise, and the last one that you do, that is actually making circles. You're going to go clockwise and counterclockwise. How many times? Depends on what you want to do. You can do it a few times, you can do it 10 times, 20. You can do 5 left, 5 right and start over again. You can do several reps, it's up to you. Just make sure that you, as you do this, try to maintain this feet parallel position as opposed to letting them point out or in. So keep your feet parallel and do the movement here. And it's going to be a rolling movement. And you'll see that my body starts to turn. This time I'm going to have my knees slightly bent. So if I lock out my knees, my hips will want to move. So I'm going to slightly bend my knees, which allows me to rotate the ankles and roll the ankles. But I'm always supporting my body weight. What you'll notice is that your feet will start to want to rotate outward at the toes. You want to prevent that. So every now and then, check down, reposition your feet if you have to, and then resume. So a slight bend in the knees, no leaning forward, backward or sideways, just keep your upper body stable. If you need, straighten out your hands a little bit for extra stability, but you should be able to do so without using the hands. So then you're going to be rolling that ankle, so the joint in and of itself, the shin bone and the fibula, which is the bone next to the shin, which is in your foot, will get rolled around, and you're kind of kneading in the joint and loosening it up. There's two ways you can go about this. I have quite quite a bit of strength in my body, so what I need is the power bands. They're quite strong, they give me a lot of pull. If you're a little bit lighter, I'm a heavyweight, you might have an easier time using these strips, these elastic bands here, because they will wrap very neatly around your ankle. So that's the upside of using these, is that they wrap around easier. The downside is that they're usually not as strong as one of these power bands. So see what works for you. If for you take the strongest maybe elastic band that you have, wrap it around once behind your ankle and use that to pull, that can work for you. It doesn't for me, but you know, to each his own. See what works for you and then try to do that. So I'll get rid of this one and we are going to use this one here. Now I'm going to use a stool. You can use a bench, whatever, something that is elevated that you can put your foot on, that is more or less stable. That's what you want. But before we use this one, I'll show you another exercise first. So that's the one that I like to use as a preliminary. What you will do is place the power band or elastic band pretty much at the joint here, a little bit below. So not as much on the shin bone, but lower still. And then pull it behind like this. Okay, so that's what you want. So different ways of going about it, but what I like to do is from here, I will angle my foot straight off to the side for the camera so you see it best. And then from here, I will stand on it with my other foot and then take a big step forward like this. Now I'm going to adjust the band a little bit because it's too high for me. So I'm going to bring it a little bit lower. So what you have here is a slightly downward angle in the rubber band, in the power band. And then what you'll do is from here, just fold the knee forward and bring it back. Bend it forward and then bring it back. What you'll get is that here at the ankle joint, the shin will be pulled slightly backwards. I'm exaggerating, but what you create is a little bit more space here between the shin bones and the ankle joint. And you have the ligaments here that can be quite tight. So the point is that you lean forward and you bring it back, you lean forward and you bring it back, and then you can go a little bit to the inside, a little bit to the outside, and that way you manipulate it different ways. So an additional way of doing this, which many people do as well, is the same thing. So hook it tight and you can put your knee on top of the band here. It's a little bit more difficult to step forward, but it works quite well to be a little bit more comfortable because I can rest my knee down. It's a little bit more stable, but you're going to have to push a little bit to get the foot forward. So again, I readjust a little bit downward because otherwise it's too high for me. So this takes a little bit of strength. So you're going to have to push it down a little bit because again, this is a strong elastic band, so that's a little bit more difficult. And then same thing, just bend that knee forward and come back. Bend it forward and come back. And just loosening up that joint, just taking your time and getting it to loosen. I go a little bit off to the side, I go a little bit off to the other side. Don't overdo it, just get some mobility going there. That's what you want. And then we're going to do the same thing here on this stool. So you can use a bench, whatever, but it shouldn't be too high, otherwise it gets a little bit difficult in my opinion. So what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to put it here, okay, and then what I'll do is, again, you can put your foot here on it. I'm going to step into the loop from here, and I'm going to try to get my foot on top. So see, I can scoot forward a little bit until I can get my foot here correctly on it. Now I'll reposition first. So again, this is a little bit too low, so I want it a little bit more here. And I'll pull up my pants here so you can see it's a little bit more on the ankle itself as opposed to on the shin bone. But you don't want it on the foot either. You want it a little bit more here towards the joint. And now you see that we have a very steep downward angle. Depending on what you need, you might have to push Now this doesn't slide here, so you need to have something that slides. You would push the bench a little bit forward, so you've got a little bit more distance here, or you can slide your foot a little bit forward, so it's further out, so the angle changes a little bit. So that you might have to do that depending on your needs. And then the same thing happens, so you're going to bend forward and then bring it back. So I try to bend my knee. See, you've got a sharp angle here at the knee joint. I'm going to bend forward and come back, bend and come back. A little bit off to the side here, a little bit off to the other side. So just leaning into it, and you just do this relaxed like this. You don't have to go fast, just work on ankle mobility. Now, don't step off, because that elastic band is going to pull you back. So release the tension here using my foot. See, I relax it, and then I can just step off and then take it out, and you're good to go. Here's a stretch you can do for your ankles. Now, this is one that we're going to do with the yoga strap. So you're going to use D-rings to create a noose to put your foot through. Show it this angle first. So I like to start with putting the noose on about the middle of my foot, or a little bit higher, but usually I start with the middle and I pull it tight a little bit. Then I'm going to straighten out that leg and lock out my knee, and then make sure that it stays locked out by grabbing my other leg and putting it on top of my shin bone or on top of my upper leg. Don't put it on your knee, that gets painful. So I'm going to put it here, and this keeps my legs straightened out and immobilizes my ankle. Now I'm going to grab from underneath my top leg the strap, wrap it around my hand, and then I can pull here with my elbow. So I'm pulling the elbow tight so I don't go outward but in. Sit up straight, and you see what happens. This is my foot pointing straight forward. It's aligned neutrally, and if I pull, it starts coming inward, and this creates a stretch here on the outside of the ankle. So I'm going to continuously pull, and what I like to do is grab the strap with my other hand and assist in pulling. So, and this gives me quite a deep stretch. Then you breathe, you relax, and try to relax into the stretch. Now, you need to make sure that this bottom leg stays fully straight, and to intensify the stretch from the ankle towards sometimes all the way up the hip and the lower back, you will inhale and lean into it, keeping your head high and straight, your back as straight as you can, as opposed to crumbling straight down. So going straight forward. And then you hold and you do for as long as works best for you. Now, this is the first method. The second method will, instead of at around the middle of the foot, I'm going to move the strap a little bit higher. And in this position, so that's about 1/3 of the foot here. The rest is the same. Put your other leg on top of the shin or the upper leg, straighten out your bottom leg, wrap around the hands, grab if you want to with the other hand. And if I pull here, it's going to not only rotate my foot, but also the top of my toes will start coming down towards the floor and get an additional torque and stretch into the joint. So, and this is going to help make it a little bit more flexible on the right side here. So, showing it to you from a side position. So the same thing applies. Either top third or middle is where you attach it. You can do it over your other leg, but I like to keep it underneath. I like that. I think that's a little bit more practical. So that makes sure that the cable, the strap doesn't move. I'm putting my other leg on top, keeps everything nice and tight. Start with your toes pointing straight up. Don't let your foot rotate outwards. So start with your toes straight up, and then you're going to use the hand here that has the strap and pull that elbow back, using your back muscles to generate force. So, and then from here, I start by pulling, and you see that my foot moves in, and I like to assist with the other hand to get a really good deep stretch. You want to go further, inhale, and then you go with your whole spine as one unit, go forward, hold at the far end position where you get a good stretch for as long as you're comfortable. What we want to have is enough flexibility for the muscle here to move correctly and not actually create tension in other parts of your body that then will have an effect on the rest of it. So for instance, if it's too tight here, that can cause problems a little bit higher in the pelvis area and lower back eventually. So you want to make sure that you avoid that. Now, again, I'll show it in phases. So the first part of the stretching exercise is very, very basic. I'm going to go in a kneeling position first. I'm going to sit down on my heel, and I want to have my heel pointing straight backwards. So it's not folded into the inside, but it's going to be straight. So that's the first thing I want. I'm going to sit down straight on it, and I'm going to extend my lead leg. For some people, this is already plenty. So what you want to make sure is that from here, you make sure that this is positioned correctly. So I'm sitting on my heel. I'm not sitting next to it. So, and then from here, you want to lean back, and I'm just using my hands to walk backwards and just relax and make sure that I lean as far back as I can. Now, I'm not going to go too far here because then it's going to be difficult for me to talk. So what I'll do is from this position to make the stretch, which you should feel right here, more intense, and this takes some focus, you are going to contract your buttocks on the right side. So you're going to contract the buttocks here. It's as if you're pushing your hips up. That is the intent that you have, but you don't really move. So this is relaxed, so I'm going to contract my buttocks, and you see that my upper leg moved a little bit, and that is actually going to tighten the front side, take the slack out of it a little bit, and then the stretch will be a little bit deeper. So that is, and then same thing, you lean back as far as you can and try to get a good stretch in here. Now, one of the reasons why I don't like to go all the way back is that if you do, what often happens is that people bend here in the lower spine. And sure, you get all the way down, but you get a lot of tension in your lower back and not necessarily a lot more in your quadriceps, which is a muscle you're targeting. So to offset that, what we can do is many different things. And the main thing we'll do here is make sure that you use something to elevate the foot. And we're going to start low. Same thing, put the foot on top. And then it's basically the same thing. So I'm going to position myself here first, tighten up the glutes on the right side, make sure that I'm sitting on the heel, and then I'm going to lean backwards and stretch. And what you'll feel is that this is going to give you a deeper stretch to begin with. So that is the second variation that you can do. Same thing, lean back, and you should feel it here. If you feel pain in your lower back, obviously you stop immediately. So what you want to have is, from this position, make sure that you get a deep stretch in the quadriceps without just falling backwards. So that's why you put your hands on the floor to stabilize yourself and gradually lean backwards. Remember that in stretching, you don't go fast, you go slow, you relax, you breathe, and you slowly let the muscle try to elongate. For this one, you can use the yoga strap again and use the idea of a noose. But what I like to do is actually, for here, use the power band a little bit, and I'll explain in a bit. So what I'm going to do here is wrap it around my foot like this, okay, and sit down. And from here, I'm going to relax it. And you can see, so that's around the middle of my foot. So that's the starting position here. You pull it back, and I'm going to pull it on my shoulder like this, as if I'm carrying something heavy on my shoulder. So I'm going to pull it tight from here, okay? And then from here, I'm going to bring it back and get into a kneeling position. So to get into a kneeling position, what you do is from here, first bring your other foot forward and then rise out of it. And see how this pulls my knee with me? So I'm going to step a little bit forward, and then from here I can now pull on that elastic band. Oh, sorry, losing my balance here a little bit. So I can pull that tight and then try to get into a high kneeling position here and just try to pull it as tight as I can and then stay here. Now, you should feel it here maybe if your psoas, your hip flexors are tight, you'll feel that first. But what I try to do is make sure that I bring my heel as close to my buttocks as I can and then hold it there. Now, the reason why I like to use the power band here is one of the ways in which you can help your quads relax is now I'm going to push a little bit downward. So look at my foot, I'm pushing a little bit downward. That creates a contraction here a little bit, and I'm going to let it go, and then I'm going to pull some more and get a deep stretch again. So that is why I like to use the power bands, because now I can just totally relax into it after the contraction for a couple of seconds, relax, and then go a little bit further. If you hold this for X amount of time, you want to get out of it, just slowly lower your foot and you can get out of it like this. So that is an easy way to practice it. I'm using a chair here with something soft on it because this is a metal edge and that's going to cut into your foot, so that is not going to be painful, not going to be comfortable. One of the keys of stretching is relaxing into it. So if you feel pain because you're hitting a hard object here, it's going to be difficult for you to relax and stretch deeply. So put a towel on top of a chair if it's got an edge like this one here, or a small pillow, or this yoga pillow here that I'm using. Different ways of going about it, but the way that I like to do it is from here. I'm going to put one hand here or hold it, or here, wherever you like, and you just want to make sure that you have a little bit of space, and then I can put my foot on top of it like this. So I'm putting it down, I'm going to go a little bit forward, and then I'm going to put my hand on the floor and kneel. So you basically want to have the knee on the floor like this. I'm going to walk forward with my other leg, and the main thing I want to do now is push myself upwards. Now you don't want to do this here. Watch my lower back. This is arcing backward. So this is putting a lot of pressure on my lower spine. What I want to do is bring my buttocks and my heel together. So I'm going to use my lead leg and push myself backwards like this. So this is forward, this is backwards. So this is the first part of the exercise. So I'm pushing myself backwards like this. Okay, and I'm going to try to rotate my hips backwards, and I'm pushing a little bit my stomach forward like this, and this is going to extend it a little bit more and create even a little bit more of a stretch in the quads, or maybe in the hip flexors if they are tighter. So that brings me to a quick sidebar. If several muscles are linked, the one that is tightest is where you will feel the exercise most. So if you don't feel it in your quads, but you feel a little bit higher here in your hip flexors, then you might have to work your hip flexors a little bit more. So pushing backwards with my lead leg, and I'm pushing myself into my heel that is lying here on the chair, and then just breathe, relax into it. For a little bit more of a stretch, the left glute, I'm going to tighten it up a little bit, and that's going to take the slack out of everything again. And then I get an even deeper stretch. Just stand here. You can keep pushing with your hands on your knee as well to keep you backwards, and just hold it and relax. An additional part that you can do for a slightly different feel in the psoas here is that you will now come forward. And I'm not bending forward, but I'm staying high, and I want my hip and my upper leg to travel forward. That's my focus point. So then you will get this sometimes weird combination of both the hip flexor and a part of your quad here on the front side that will get a stretch, depending on if there's stiffness for you there. So, and then from here you hold and you just stay there for a while, breathe, let go, and if you can go a little bit further after a few seconds, that's fine, but don't overdo it. To get out of this one, what I like to do is just go down on hands and knees like this, rotate and lift your foot out, and then you're good to go. So the reason why I show these different type of stretches for the quadriceps is just it's quadriceps means four heads, caput is head. So the idea is that there's different parts of your quad that might be tight. And not every stretch is going to hit it just exactly the same way. So maybe this stretch works well for you, or maybe not at all. Maybe the first one we did, where just putting the foot on the floor and leaning backwards was better. Maybe the one with the power band pulling worked better for you. You're gonna have to experiment a little bit. Now, the main misconception is that you have to put your foot as high as possible when you do these kind of stretches. Not necessarily. So I'll show you a few different ways of doing them. Now I'm going to use this one here first. So, and this is at first just going to be for my support. So I'll show it this way. I'm going to put a little bit away from me so you get a better angle of what I'm doing here. So this is just to put my hand on and support myself. So I'm going to go in a half kneeling position first. That's the first one. And then I'm going to put my foot here. Just keeping my balance, tighten the glutes, stay high. And the only thing you do from here is try to go forward with your head like this. And then come straight back. So keep your spine straight, suck in your gut a little bit, tighten up the abs a little bit. Your head looks straight forward. You can put your hand here, that's fine. Don't push on it, just for balance is fine. This is great as well. And then you lean forward and you come back. So you lean forward and you come back. What you don't want to do is have your hips go backwards. So this is correct. I'm leaning forward. This is not correct. My hips are going backwards. So you don't want that. You want your upper body to fold in half, as if you could go all the way, that you would lie all the way on your leg with your upper body. That's the goal. But the main reason also why I'm adding this here, if I'm pushing slightly upward, that is going to help elongate my spine. It's also, if I combine that with tightening my glutes on the left side, it's going to stabilize my hips. And then if I make sure that my right leg is fully straight and my toes are pointing up, then there's not a lot of wiggle room left in all those joints. So that means that the stretch that I'm going to do here is going to be much more focused and more effective. Now, the whole point is that you do this as far as you can and then you come back. You can hold, go forward, hold, and then if you feel after a couple of breaths that you can go a little bit further, you can insist a little bit more and lean a few inches or half an inch or whatever forward. Now what you don't want is to do this. You can see that my spine is in a really bad posture there. So you want to maintain a straight spine, neutral spine, and then use your hips as a turning point and not your back itself. Now the main thing you want to avoid is rotating the foot outward. That's what happens so often. So your toes have to keep pointing at the ceiling. So that's the first way of doing this. Another way, which is a little bit different, but also quite interesting, is that you're going to use the stool here. Now, you can use a higher platform, you don't have to, but I like to show it a little bit lower because then we can work a little bit more focused. So what you're going to do is, first of all, make sure that your foot is pointing straight forward. That is the first point. So not off to the side, but straight forward. Stand up straight, then you're going to pick up one leg and put it in front of you. So this is the first part. Straighten out that leg and we repeat the exercise from before. Again, if you like, you can have a stick here, a broomstick that you push down. I'm going to grab the wall here and push down a little bit, and that stabilizes my spine. Tighten up the back glute, keep it tense. Inhale, tighten up your stomach muscles as well, and then go as far forward as you can and come back. See, I'm going very slowly. I'm holding for X amount of time, and then you're going to come back. You can actually do this very relaxed, not bouncing movement. You don't want to bounce, but you can do this sliding movement going forward and back a little bit here. Or you can do a more static version, which is holding forward, staying here. You feel that the muscle relaxes, you inhale, and you'll go a little bit further still. Okay, and you keep going that way. Now, a couple of points. If you have here the feeling of more in the tendons, so here very close to the knee, that's where you feel it the most, then you're actually pulling mostly on the tendon and not as much on the belly of the muscle itself. So that isn't necessarily a good thing. So what you want to try then next is, instead of having that knee straight, I'm going to pull back my heel a little bit and bend the leg slightly. So there's a slight angle here in my knee this time. Same thing, I'm going to stand up straight, contract the glute, suck in my gut, keep it steady, a little bit of tension downward here, and then I'm going to go far forward, leaning forward, head straight, spine in neutral, and you should feel it more here now in the middle, in the belly of the muscle, as opposed to the tendon here. So that is what sometimes happens, is that you develop a certain flexibility, but not evenly throughout the muscle. So if you're hitting the tendons too much, they might actually get irritated and become and eventually you could get injured that way. Or if you feel a tingling down your leg, this little bit of numbness, then you're actually squeezing the nerves, and that is never a good idea, because you don't want to irritate the nerves in your body either. That always ends badly as well. So then bending that knee a little bit and working on the belly of the muscle, loosening that up, that is actually going to give you more flexibility without all the potential downsides of focusing too much on the attachment on the tendon itself. So that is something that you can do. Now, let's assume that you have the flexibility to go a lot further than that. What you can do still, or you are making good progress and you, instead of doing it here, you can do it on a horizontal surface. So the foot again should be pointing straight forward. So I'm going to rotate my foot and put it straight forward, lock this knee and stand up straight. Now this chair is a little bit too light for me, should be heavier, because it's a little bit going to lever towards me. So that makes it a little bit more uncomfortable for me, but you get the point. So trying to keep the toes pointing straight up, and then from here I can go forward with a nice stretch. So same thing, never do this. See the position of my spine, this is always bad. So what you want to have is a straight spine, locking out the knee, contracting the glutes, pulling in the stomach muscles, and then going straight forward as far as you can. What you want to do is have a combination of tension and relaxation. So what that means is, from here I am standing up straight, I'm going to stretch forward, and when I hit the limit I stay there for a couple of seconds. Now what I'll do then, with about, let's say, 30% of strength, not more, more isn't better, I'm going to use my hamstring to push my heel into the chair, and that's going to tighten my hamstring a little bit. 30% is more than enough, but I'm not moving up again, I'm staying here. So I'm going to contract here in the hamstring, and I'm pushing down now on the chair. Nothing moves for about 5 to 8 seconds. Then, without moving anything here, I'm going to relax, inhale, exhale, and go a little bit further. So what happens is that with my leg that is here, I'm actually trying to pull it down, push it down into the floor. To do that, I have to contract the hamstrings a little bit. Now, because I'm only doing it with a limited amount of strength, there's not really a risk of injury. So what you're with the proprioceptive method, what you want to do is trigger the parts of your body that are basically trying to protect that muscle from getting stretched too fast, too far, and so on, trying to convince it that it shouldn't freak out and contract that muscle. This is an automatic reflex that our muscles have to protect themselves from stretching too far, too fast. There's a lot more going on. I'm oversimplifying, but the point is that that system is very, very conservative, which means that it triggers your muscles to contract, so they shorten and protect themselves from that stretching movement. They're very, very quick to do that, even when there might not be a real danger of injury at that point. So by lightly contracting the muscle, staying in the position, relaxing, inhaling, exhaling, and then going further, you can actually recalibrate that system a little bit and then stretch further than if you don't do that, and if you just stop at the first time that you can't go further, that you hit your limit. So the trick with that is just taking your time and doing it about 3 times in a row. If after 3 times of contract, relax, advance, contract, relax, advance, and so on, so you do that 3 times, you'll be at pretty much the limit of what your flexibility can give you. So you can do that for almost all muscles, but it's easiest to show it with the hamstrings. Now, when you do this, always be careful. If you're in these very strong twisted positions with your spine that we sometimes do, like with the pretzel stretches, you might not want to tighten up all, too hard. Just be careful with this. It's not about contracting hard. It's about contracting a little bit so that there's a little bit of tension, and then you release that tension, and then you can stretch a little bit more. So again, very slowly, very progressively, very carefully, try to increase how far you go into the stretch, as opposed to just tightening up hard and then trying to force your way. Now, another way of doing it is from here, I'm going to rotate my foot instead of pointing straight, slightly inward. So it's a little bit inward. That's going to lock my right hip into place. Now from here, it's best if you grab something for balance. I'm going to put the other foot here on top of it. And now I want to make sure that my foot is on my center line as opposed to in front of my hip. And then I want to square up my hips at the same time. So I don't want to rotate this hip forward, I want to keep it back. So both hips are next to each other. And then toes up and then stretch. And that is actually going to give you a really deep stretch. So I'll show it facing the camera so you can see. So it's a little bit hard, so you're not going to focus on the foot, but we're going to focus on center line first. So my foot is straight forward, a little bit to the inside, 10-15 degrees is plenty. I'm going to step back a little bit, and then I'm going to put my foot here. Now what most people do is, what you can see is my foot is in front of my hip. You can stretch there, it's fine. What I want you to try now is move it in towards the center line. And then make sure that this hip here didn't come forward. You don't rotate. On the contrary, pull it back and make sure that your hips are one next to the other. And then you do the stretching. And you'll feel that this is a lot more effective than other methods. So this is a very advanced method that for many people is not something that you start with. You work towards it. So always be careful. You don't want to pull hamstrings. It's very painful. So take your time with it. Let's look at some of the exercises that we can do for the hips. Now again, many martial artists from kicking styles have usually very flexible hips, but sometimes overly flexible or not flexible in all the different ways that you can actually work flexibility and mobility in your hips. So that is one aspect of what we'll cover. Another aspect is if you have certain issues with hip flexibility and want to improve it, the exercises here will help you with that. So let's start with a couple of mobility exercises that we'll do first. I weighed down the chair a little bit because I don't want it to tip over, and that can actually happen if I put too much force on it now. But if you can use a table or anything else, it doesn't really matter what you use, but it needs to be stable this time. That's important. So I will put my support foot pointing straight towards the camera, and the chair is on my left side. So what I'll do is put my foot here on top of it. So that is the first thing that you have to do. So I pivoted my foot, so I'm gonna make sure that it is here pointing straight forward. Now the absolute minimum is that you can stand fully straight here. If you're already folding sideways or bending or leaning, then this is too high, take something lower. But preferably, this is a little bit low for me. I like to have it at 90 degrees. So lock out that straight leg here and make sure the toes are pointing up of your other leg, and also lock out this leg here. Now, I'm going to do a series of movements that involve me leaning forward from my hips. So you're not rounding off your back, you're keeping your back straight, and it's in the hips that you want to do the movement. So the first thing I'll do is from here, if I am now facing the camera, I'll start facing a 45-degree angle. So this is my leg, that's 45 degrees, and this here is straight in front of me. So at 45 degrees, I'm going to lean forward slightly from the hip and come back. And you just do this for 10, 20 reps, whatever you want. I mean, a little bit more, a little bit less. I'm just leaning forward, and this leg doesn't move. I'm just leaning forward, and my hip is actually, it needs to loosen to allow me to do that. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I will rotate 90 degrees. So this is the direction of my foot, 90 degrees, straight forward, chest straight. Open your hips and do the same thing. Lean forward as far as you can and come back. Lean forward and come back. So it's all bending at the waist, using the hips. You don't use the spine. Next, I'm going to bend my support leg and sink through it. So sink through, and this is going to pull a little bit in the hips. If you're not very flexible, you'll feel this a lot. If you are, this will be easy. So that is the first thing you do. Now the main thing, what you want to see is, imagine that I've put my foot here up in the air. When you lean forward, again, like I said, it needs to be straight from the hips, like this, as opposed to crunching down and rounding off your back. So you don't want to round off your back, you want to keep it straight. All the leaning forward that you do, it's not unlike what you have in deadlifts. If you lift weights, you understand this. So from here, my hips do the movement here, leaning forward and then coming back. You don't work from the spine. So that's a key point that you want to have here in this drill. So the next thing that we'll do is I'm going to face the chair this time, and I'm going to put my foot on top. So this is a little bit narrow for me. So I need normally a surface. That's why I like to use a table. It's a little bit higher usually, and also more surface. This is a little bit narrow. It's going to be quite difficult. But this is the best chair that I could easily get in here in the studio. So I'm going to face forward with my foot and then put the other foot on top of it. So I'm going to push it a little bit so it's at the right distance. I'll skip up. So this is good for me. So ideally, again, 90 degrees. One straight leg, one straight leg. If you can't do that, again, go a little bit lower. So from here, I'll stand up straight and I'm going to go forward and come back. So I'm pushing my toes forward and that pulls me a little bit forward, and then I'm flexing my foot backwards, and that is going to give me a little bit of mobility in my hips here. You'll feel it a little bit maybe in the hamstrings as well, okay, going forward and backwards. So with this here, do it 10, 20 reps, same thing. Obviously, it goes without saying, we will do everything left side and right side. So from that position, we're moving on to the next one. I'm going to kneel down. Again, the half kneeling position that I do here. So I've been working on my left hip, so I'm going to put my left knee down. I like to use the chair or the table because it's right there, and I'll go a little bit at an angle so you can see it better. So 90 degrees here, 90 degrees in the knee here and back, standing straight. Then tighten up the glutes, tighten that up, pull in the stomach a little bit, and try to be very stable in this position. Push down a little bit here on your hand, like this, and that's automatically going to stabilize a little bit more. Make sure you're tall here, and then you lean forward and back. Forward and back like this. Okay, and I'm just leaning from the hips. So I'm not going to arch my back here. I'm not creating a hollowed out back. I'm trying to stay very tall and then leaning forward and pushing my hips forward, okay, but not putting pressure on my spine. So that's one part of the exercise. And then we move on, we do the next one, and from here you will be reaching. So I'm going to reach straight to the ceiling with my left arm, and then I'm going to bend sideways. So I'm going to face the camera so you see it better. So 90 degrees in the back foot, 90 degrees in the front foot. Make yourself tall, squeeze the glutes, pull in the stomach, stand tall, and normally I would have the chair and I would be pushing down here, and that's my starting position. Then from here, I'm going to use that left hand. Instead of pushing, I'm going to reach for the sky as high as I can. And you keep pushing, don't just hold it here, but keep pushing. And as you keep pushing, you keep inhaling the stomach and then lean to the side, and you come back and you do again 10, 20 reps and so on. Okay, and from that position, you pretty much did the whole reaching. So we're going to move on to some rotations, and the main thing you do is, what I like to do is lock up my arms. make fists and pull my shoulder blades in. And then the only thing that moves is my upper body. So I go left and right, left and right. And this is rotation for the upper body, but that's going to pull in that left hip if you do it right. So make sure you keep the tension in your glutes, keep your stomach tucked in, and stay very tall. Don't slouch, but stay very tall in your position as you do that. So we just did the exercises for loosening up that hip. We're going to expand on those now. First, we're going to do it actively, and then we're going to do it a little bit more passive. So I'm going to use the yoga strap in a minute now, but I'll show you the exercise first. So what you'll do is lie straight down and make sure that you're comfortable here, and you just lie straight down like this. You can drop your arms, it's fine. Now from here, what I'll do is just pick up that left leg and then try to bring it to the outside as far as I can. If you can touch the floor, it's fine. And then you sweep it downwards until you're back to the starting position. So bring it up, let it go off all the way to the side, as low as you can, and then sweep it down and bring it back. You do that 5 to 10 times. Then you do the other way. You go out first, off to the side, bring it all the way up, and then you lower it again. So out to the side as far as you can, bring it up, and then lower it again. Obviously, you would do this on the left side, on the right side. What you can do if you feel that it's a little bit sore, or you don't have yet the strength and the conditioning to do all the reps, do 5 on the left side going one way, 5 on the right side going one way, 5 on the left side going the other way, and then the same thing on your right leg. So that way one side can rest while the other one works, and you don't waste too much time waiting for a muscle to recover. So that's an easy way to do it. This drill works best if you do it right after the previous one, in which we did all the loosening up and the preparation basically for this one. Now the next part is where we use the yoga strap again. So I'm going to wrap it around my foot like this, okay? And then I'm going to basically try to increase the mobility but relax more. What we just did is an active way of mobilizing the hips. What we'll do now is a more passive way. I like both. So I'm going to lie down and I'm going to pull that hip high. So this will give a hamstring stretch. You're going to have to adjust and search the right hand position here. So I like to wrap it around my hand a little bit. You can do it left, you can do it right. It's whatever you like. The main thing is that I try to pull from my elbows when I move my leg like this. So you can do it like I'm showing here with both arms as well. Now what I do is, if you notice what my arms are doing, I'm going to pull that in. And that is going to take all the slack out of my knee joint. But because I'm relaxing, I'm not trying to pull it backwards as far as I possibly can. It's just, it needs to be straight, otherwise the hip doesn't get the same work. So what I'll do is at first just lower it off to the side and then pull it back in again. I'm a little bit using the muscles, but not that much. I can shift this to the other hand if you prefer that way. Just lower it off to the side like this. See, I can let it rest and then pull it back and bring it over this way. Always relaxed in a gentle manner. So you do that 5 to 10 times. Every time you come to the end, to the low position, so I'm gonna switch grips here, go slow. So don't let it fall, always go slow. And then you bring it back in a relaxed manner. Now the next part here is, first you go to the side, and then you're going to let your foot drop. So my foot is lying on the floor, my leg is lying on the floor. All this time my right leg didn't move, and then you pull it up and you bring it back. So I'm using my bicep to bring that foot as high as I can and just let it slide back. Pull it up, slide back. And you try to do this as far as you can without cheating, without trying to sort of roll or turn into it. What you need to have is that your upper body and your right leg don't move as you are doing these exercises, but they're very passive. So I'm just going to let this drop down, very relaxed, pulling it off to the side. From here, I hold it down, let it come back. I'm not bringing it all the way to my legs. I'm just letting it slide down a little bit until I feel the tension going away. And then I'm going to pull it up, sliding across the floor again, like this. And in this manner, you're going to have this hip opening effect that you're creating, but your muscles are very relaxed. So the idea is that you very gradually try to increase the range of motion, and you're teaching the muscles at the same time that as they are moving throughout these stretched positions, that you can actually relax. A lot of the flexibility gains that you can make, especially in the beginning, are teaching your muscles that they can actually be relaxed and safe when you are doing these high amplitude movements in your hips. The next muscle we're going to do is the piriformis. Piriformis is a muscle that is pretty much underneath your buttocks, and it's very deep in the body. The reason why it's important to figure out if that one's tight with not is because if it locks up, it tends to lock up your hips and cause problems with your lower back and a lot more. Look up piriformis syndrome and you'll notice that this is quite common. So what we're going to do is do a couple of stretches for that. Now, a second reason why it's important is that the piriformis can actually squeeze on the sciatic nerve and trigger it. And then you get this tingling or numbness in all the way down your leg sometimes. So that can be quite painful and cause a lot of issues. So that's why a piriformis stretch is something that is usually forgotten, but it has a lot of advantages of trying it. So the most basic way, I'll show that first. I'm sitting down on a chair. That's the easiest way to do it. So what you need to do is don't lean back, but in fact, you might actually scoot forward a little bit, sitting more at the tip of the chair or the edge of the chair. Sit up straight and then pick up either leg, left or right, doesn't matter, but you pick up a leg and you grab your foot and you put it on top of your knee like this. So what you want to have is push your knee as much down as you possibly can. So if you can get it horizontal, that would be great. If you can't, well, that's fine. If you cannot even sit straight in this, I'll show you an easier way in a second. So that's the first one. I like to hook here or hook here, and then use my hand here on my shin and use my elbow to keep it down. Then first things first, sit up straight, and then you're going to try to lean forward as much as you can. So you're going to bring your whole body forward. And then you should feel here, I'm using my right leg, deep in underneath my right buttock, I should feel a pull, a stretch. If your lower spine is already locked, you might feel it there first. Piriformis is a really small muscle, so it's not something you're used to stretching. So I'll show it from a different angle. So I'm sitting down. I'm going to sit first a little bit more forward. So I'm a little bit more close to the edge of the chair. Then I'm going to grab my foot and put it here on top of my other knee. I like to hook with one arm to keep it tight and push this knee down with the elbow or forearm as I hook my shin bone with the other arm. And then try to keep all that down. And then first sit up straight, inhale. And as you exhale, you go straight forward. So don't do this. That would be wrong. So try to sit straight and go straight forward and keep that elbow down. That knee down. Your knee will want to come up, but this isn't really stretching anything. So you need to be straight here and try to go forward as much as you can. Hold, breathe, relax as always. And what you'll do is from here, lie down, flat on your back like this. And what I'm going to do is from here, cross my legs like this. I'm putting myself in the same position as on the chair, but I'm lying down. So foot on your knee. And what you can do then is from here, depending if it slides off, then it doesn't work. But what you can do is from here, grab behind your knee and then pull everything towards you. So now because you're lying down, this is a little bit easier. So I'm going to pull this all back like this, and then you get a reasonably good stretch. Now,
Same thing here. You want to keep the foot stable and the knee as far away from you as you can. If you're having trouble with that still, another way you can do it is putting your foot on top of the chair. So I'm going to put it here like this. I'm going to bring it a little bit closer and then do the same thing here. So now my foot is more relaxed, and what I like to do then is make sure that I'm lying flat on my back, push on that knee, bring it away from me, and then from here make sure that I have a good grip, and then I am going to actively pull my left knee forward. So I'm using the hip flexor to pull that knee in slowly, but that is actually what creates the stress. So this chair doesn't slide well, but you would slide your heel forward like this. So my heel is on the chair, I'm sliding it forward towards me. That is bringing my knee forward, and that is pushing this foot that way, which is going to create the stretch. But I first secure the foot, use my hands to push the knee down, and then bring everything forward. And then you'll have a good stretch again. Same thing, hold, breathe, relax, and slowly get out of it, never jumping out of it. There's one more way that you can do this, and I'll show that one here, and you would do that against the wall. Now I'm going to switch legs a little bit because it's going to be difficult otherwise to see, and I'm also going to take my shoes off because you don't want to leave marks on the wall. So what you'll do is do the same thing with it here, but with one foot on the wall. So I'm going to lie back and put one foot on the wall. Then I'm going to bring my other foot on my knee, and as you can see, I'm reasonably close to the wall here, but my hips are off the floor. See my hands underneath. So what I'll do is from here secure my hand on my ankle so the foot doesn't move, push that knee down, and then I'm going to slowly drop my hips and relax into it. And then my body weight is actually doing the stretch. So I'm keeping this push down and I'm just relaxing down. If you don't feel it anymore or it's become too easy, what you do is then put the foot a little bit higher. I'm going to scoot a little bit more with my butt towards here, the wall, and then I'm going to start again. And you'll notice now that from here, see how high my hips are. They're a lot higher from the floor, so there's a lot more leverage that I can put on them. Same thing, push this down and then slowly drop your hips. If you drop your hips and you let the knee come up like this, it's not going to stretch well. So this is another one of those stretches that doesn't seem like much until that muscle locks up, which it can do. It can kind of cramp up and it creates all sorts of problems that you might not associate with the piriformis, that small muscle. So let's take a look at some more exercises for hip mobility. This is a series of stretches that I like to use, and they can be quite challenging. So we're going to start with some basic versions first and then add some complexity to it afterwards. So this is all going to target a little bit more the outside for now, and I'll mix it up in a little bit, but start for a little bit more of the outside portion of the hip as opposed to the inside, which we did before. Now, what you'll start by doing here is bend your leg, your right leg in this case, at about a 90-degree angle, and I'm going to slide my other leg here behind it. So what I'll do is I'm going to touch my right foot on my upper leg of my left leg here. So that's behind. The next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to show it to you this angle first so you can see better. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to get the middle of my chest aligned with the middle of my knee. So going straight, folding forward like this. Okay, and try to go as far as you can. I'm not going straight down, I'm going as far forward as I can. And from this position here, I'm going to kick out that back leg. And then what I'll try to do is from here, rotate my foot so that the flat of the foot is all the way down from here. And that is usually the moment when your right hip is going to hike up from the floor a little bit. So what I'll try to do is from here, readjust my position so that the center line here is right above the middle of my knee. And then you're going to try to adjust so you can very slowly go forward and down as far as you can. At the minimum, you'll need to support yourself on the right hand here and try to go down. Breathe, relax as always. If you can, straighten out that back leg a little bit more. I'm going to put my hand here in front and push, and I'm pushing myself backwards to get even more of an opening and a deeper stretch. From here, what you can do is additionally make sure that you get a little bit more leverage by extending the left arm. So this is my right leg, right hand supports, left hand extends and reaches as you go forward as far as you possibly can. So it's a little bit similar to what we did before. And that is the position that you hold. If you can go all the way down. I can, because my hips are a little bit more locked up than they used to be, but you go as far down as you possibly can. This takes a little bit of maneuvering to figure out what the right angle is, how far you have to twist and turn so you can get all the way on top of that leg. Where you should feel it is here, the outside portion of your hip and your glutes, your buttocks here. So that's the goal. So I'll do it on the other side. This is my bad side, so you guys get to see what that looks like. So I'm going to show it sideways. So I'm bending my knee and I'm putting, this is my left leg, I'm putting my left foot against the top of my right leg. So then I'm going to show you how you can do it like this. I'm going to put my left hand down, I'm going to put my right hand down and forward. So what I have is the center line of my body as much as possible on top of the middle of my knee. So if my knee is pointing straight forward for me, my head needs to go in the same direction. I'm not going over there, I'm going in the same direction. So that's the first part. Then the next part is I'm going to straighten out that back leg. It's going to be a little bit more difficult. Then afterwards, I'm going to rotate that leg so the heel is up like this. Okay. And at this point, usually what you have to readjust a little bit so that you can stay center line with your body in relation to your knee. And only then do you start to try to go down as far as you can. Now at this point, again, what you can do is straighten out the right arm. So left leg is down, right arm goes forward, like this. You straighten out and you reach far forward as you can, and then try to relax a little bit. If you have like a 5-pound weight, you can hold it in your, or a 2-pound weight, hold it in your hand, and that is going to give a huge difference in how deep you can stretch. So that is the first version. The second version is a little bit more complicated in the sense that it takes a little bit more flexibility. So what I'm going to do is show it to you facing the camera first. So what I'll do is same starting position. So this time, so my knee is pointing towards the camera like this, and my right foot touches the top of my back leg as before. The difference is that this time, instead of keeping my right leg in this position, I'm going to leave my left leg here, but I'm going to scoot my foot over all the way forward. So my toes are now pointing towards the camera. That's the first part. So this, if you're sitting very awkward like this, push yourself up with your right leg. Try to keep your spine straight and neutral. This is a difficult stretch to begin with. So if you can't do that, just be very careful and don't force it. I'm still going to kick out that back leg in the same way as I did before. What you'll notice is that your foot will want to move inward and slide away to compensate. You don't want that, so you're going to have to try to keep this here. Now, what you can do is come out of the position forward a little bit and use your hands for balance as you then kick out your back leg. So I'll show that. So I'm going to come forward. I'm going to put my hand here, and that is going to keep this foot here in position. I'm going to lean forward. I'm going to come up a little bit out of the position, and then I'm sliding back my left leg and kicking it out. And then what I want to do is from here, I'm going to use the inside
of my hand or my forearm to stick to the bottom of my foot, and then I'm going to lie down all the way forward as far as I can. So same thing, you're reaching forward as far as you can. You're not trying to go with your head to the floor, but you're reaching as far as you can. In this position as well, if I am using my right leg at the bottom to lie upon, if this doesn't move sideways, you can reach with your left hand far forward, grab a light weight, keep it extended, and that's going to pull you forward a little bit more. So same thing from the other side, again showing you my bad side. So starting here, the same position as the previous exercise. So my knee is bent, the foot of my left leg touches the top of my right leg. Same position as before, but instead of leaning straight away, I'm going to move that left leg so the toes point straight forward. So at this point, my foot, my knee, and my hips are all on the floor. So my knee isn't up, it needs to be down. If you can't do that, bring it back until that knee is on the floor. You want that knee on the floor. So you might have to gradually move to the position that I'm doing now, but eventually you want to have your foot pointing straight forward. So I have pretty much about a 90-degree angle almost here in my left leg. So you can lean forward right away, but what I like to do is work my way forward into the stretch. So I'm going to lean forward, I'm going to lock this foot into place, and then I'm going to slightly come out of the stretch a little bit, raise myself up off the floor so I can kick back that rear leg more comfortably. You can do it differently, but that's the way I like to do it. So I'm going to stick against the bottom of my foot, hand on the floor, hand against the foot, forearm against it, whatever you want to do, it's fine. Just the foot shouldn't move, because otherwise it's going to be difficult getting it back into position again. So from here, I'm going to come forward a little bit. I'm kicking out my back leg. I'm rotating so my foot points straight to the floor. I'm using my right hand to make sure my left foot doesn't move. And then I'm going to slide backwards like this. So I'm sliding backwards, and this is going to stretch here. And then from here, again, this is my bad hip, so I can't go as low. So from here, I can try to go forward as much as I can. Inhale, exhale, and go down. And you can then reach again, create additional leverage. So that is another hip stretch. So I'll show it to you with my good side so you can see what that looks like. So after a while, you get more comfortable doing this, and it's a little bit easier to get into the position, and you can do it right away like this. Okay, and then inhale, exhale. See, now reach and go far. If this foot doesn't move, you can straighten out both arms. That's fine too. So that is a rather intensive hip stretch, but there's even another one still. We're going to do that one now. So we're going to start with same thing, having 90 degrees here in the left leg and in the right leg up front. This stretch is in 3 phases. So the first thing I'm going to do is try to make sure that I can sit straight. I'll rotate for the camera, so I need to be able to sit straight up. If you're like this, okay, that's wrong, I'm bent, so you need to sit straight. So that requires a fair bit of flexibility already in your hips. If that doesn't work for you, do this sitting on a bench or on your bed or anywhere else, and let this leg drop down a little bit next to the bench or bed or table or whatever you're using. So then this hip isn't really the problem. If that one's too tight to be in this position, let it drop down, and because this right leg is a focus anyway. But we can do this just as well as sitting down. Then I like to do it like this, because then this gets a stretch as well. So from here, straight up, elongate your spine, become tall, push your hand. I like to use my fingertips, I have a little bit more grip there, but you can put the palm down, lock that elbow, and try to pull your right shoulder blade down. And that stabilizes the right side of your body here and keeps your spine fully erect. So first thing I do, I'm going to turn my center line towards the middle of my knee. So this is my upper leg. Imagine that from the upper leg, that line extends forward. That's the direction that I'm going to go. I like to put my hand here to make sure that this foot doesn't move. And then from here, inhale, exhale, and you go as far forward as you can. Same thing here, you can straighten out that arm and reach, use a weight to pull yourself forward, grab something and pull, but go straight forward. Inhale, exhale, relax, and then you slowly come back, pushing yourself up. 20, 30 seconds, whatever you want to do. Next, instead of the knee, I'm going to rotate center line towards the middle of my shin, like this. And then I'm going to repeat the exercise. So center line, middle of my shin, that's where I'm going. And you're leaning forward. Inhale, exhale, relax, hold, and then you come back. Now I'm going to rotate for the camera so you can see it better. Okay, so you've got the 90-degree angle here. We did the knee, middle of the shin. Now we're going towards the foot. This is the hardest one, so it's okay if you don't go as far. So I'm going to push my right hand into the floor so I can sit up straight, pull my stomach in, stay high, focus on the foot, center line, and folding double on top of it. And don't go straight down like this. This is when you'll want to do that because it's difficult, but go straight forward as far as you possibly can. Inhale. Exhale. And you see I can't go as far. Okay, inhale. And then very slowly come back. So obviously you would do this both sides. So this is a lot of work. These are very deep stretches for your hips. So I would recommend don't go all out right away. Just build gradually up to the point where you can do this comfortably. This is called the pretzel get up. And what it means is that you're going to put your legs in sort of this pretzel position, which is a little bit awkward to sit in at first, but that's the point. It loosens up your hips. So I'm bending my left knee completely here, and I'm putting it against the foot of against the upper part of my right leg. So you bend that back leg. What you'll do then, I've got my left knee up front, then I'm going to post a little bit on my left leg. So what you don't want is to be in this completely messed up position in your spine. You want to stay tall. If you can't do it just yet without hands, it's fine. Just post on that back hand. And what you will try to do is rise straight out of this position into a kneeling position, which is a little bit awkward because of the way your hips are positioned. Now, different ways of doing it, but the basic way is you keep your hand here in back and maintain some balance on that and slightly push with it, but as little as possible. What you want to actually be doing is push your knees, the outside of my right knee and the inside, the outside of my left knee and the inside of my right knee, push it into the floor and create a lever to drive yourself upward. You don't focus on the feet. You do not focus on the feet, you focus on the knees. That's the difference. Your feet will maintain contact with the floor, obviously, but you don't try to drive from the feet, you try to drive from the knees. Beginning is a little bit difficult, so what you do is you post on that hand, and I'm going to start rising out of it very slowly, pushing myself into an upward position, and keep rising until I'm all the way vertical, like this. And again, don't drive off the foot. I can bend it even more, and then from here I'm standing vertical. What you try to do is suck in your gut like this, tighten up the abs and the core, maintain a neutral position, don't rotate left or right, just stay here all the way up here, and then try to be as tall as you can make yourself. And then from here, that's the tricky part, I'm holding my left hand ready to catch myself, but you try to slowly lower yourself into the seated position again without collapsing forward or backwards. Give yourself as much assistance as you need. It shouldn't be strength or power training. It should be using the flexibility that you worked on before, and at the same time you are trying to create that into, how should I put it?
you're doing a motion where you're going to use both flexibility and strength of the muscles and the different structures that you've been working on. So that's what we want to do. So sitting in an upright position, make yourself tall first, a little bit of assistance with the back leg, but as soon as I can, I'm going to try and release it and get myself into a tall position. So, and then slowly lower yourself. If you can do it without the hand, that's even better still, but you try to do the best you can. So, showing you on the other side and from a different angle. So I'm going to bend my right leg here first, to make sure you get a good shot of that. So bend my right leg first and bend my left leg backwards, making contact here. Now I'm posting on my right hand, here slightly behind me, and make yourself tall. And then from this position here, you try to push a little bit. So you lift yourself off the ground, gives you a little bit of a better grip to get started in the movement. Why? Because I don't want you doing this here, leaning forward and then pulling yourself up like a deadlift. That's not the goal. Then you're engaging the back too much and the glutes. That's not what I want. What I want to do is engage the hip muscles and all the surrounding areas. So stand up, sit up as tall as you can. Look straight ahead. Don't look down. Don't look up. Just look straight ahead. Inhale. Tighten up the core. A little bit of a push on that back hand here to make sure that you can start moving. But as soon as you can, you rise out of it and you go high. And you want to be in as high as possible a position. Don't push with the foot. That's key. Use your knee. Push with the knee. Same thing on the right side. Don't use the foot, but use your knee. Go as high as you can. Make yourself tall. Suck in your gut like this. And then slowly lower yourself. If you think you're going to fall, catch yourself with your hand like this. Put your fingers down and slowly go back down again. So you want to be able to do this a couple times at first and then slowly build your way into doing more repetitions. You don't have to do this for like 50,000 reps. That's not the goal. Start with 3 to 4 reps on each side. If you can do more, do a little bit more. If you feel pain, don't do it. This shouldn't be painful. That's the whole point. If you've worked on making sure that your hips have become flexible, they should be mobile. There should be enough mobility in your hips to allow this movement. If there isn't, do the other exercises first. So this is a final exercise, not the beginning, but the end of the series. There's different get-ups like this, but I like this one best. So once again from a different view. So I'm going to start here from my position. A little bit of a push on my left hand because I've got my left knee up front. Sit up high and then try to get out of it. And as soon as you can let go, you let go. And then you come out of it like this. What you can also do is from this position here, I'm going to raise my hands overhead and extend some more. So get full range of motion, push as high as you can, make yourself really long. That's going to tighten up the abs some more, make your spine work and make your hips work a little bit more as well. Here, all the way overhead, keep reaching. And then the more you sit down, the more you come forward here with your arms to balance yourself, but at the same time to make sure that you stay in a high position. And you can start from this as well if you like, if you don't need the hand here. So the whole purpose is that I'm in this seated position where I've got one hip closed and one hip rotated backwards. And then from here, what I want to have is rise out of it and go as high as I can, like this. And you're pushing your hips forward. I am not leaning backwards and hollowing out my back. I'm driving my hips forward and try to keep them high and tall like this in a sort of double kneeling position. So, and then you slowly lower yourself and sit back down. So this is quite challenging. It's not an easy exercise to do. So give yourself plenty of time. And again, if it feels painful, if something gets stuck, that can happen. It could be that, depending on your anatomy, that you do not have the range in your hips to do this kind of exercise. Don't worry about it, do the other exercises then. Not everybody will be able to do that. This has to do with
specific differences in anatomy that we have in the bone here of your upper leg that sticks into the hip. So that's basically like this. So this is the bone and there's a part sticking out and that would stick here into the hip. The shape of this bone determines in large part how flexible your hips are. With some people, this protrusion here, which is called a trochanter, is very long. Other people it's shorter. Some people it has this more or less 90-degree angle. Other people it's a little bit more upwards. Or rotated forward, backwards, has a slightly bent, curved shape. It's all different. That's something that you cannot change. That's the anatomy that you're born with. Okay, well, we deal with it. So try to improve your flexibility, but if it feels like you're blocked, like it's like you're hitting a wall, it's not muscular, it's just like it doesn't move, don't force through it, okay? The next muscle we're going to look at is called quadratus lumborum, and that is one of the deep back muscles. So if you touch your back like this, you'll feel muscles there. That's not what I'm talking about. There's a layer underneath that, what you can feel, and that is what we call a deep back muscle. Again, I'm oversimplifying the anatomy because this is not a medical video. This is just, it needs to be practical. It's a relatively small muscle, but it can cause all sorts of problems if it becomes tight. What I found is that with many martial artists, especially those who do a lot of strength training, or as we get older and we lose some of our mobility, this becomes an issue and it can cause a chain reaction throughout the body and lock up other parts. And then all of a sudden, for instance, your knee hurts because it started here in the back. And vice versa, you might have a knee problem and that travels all the way up through your body towards something else, and then that locks up that muscle and so on. So it can be sometimes difficult to find the cause, but we very often can find effects. So in this case, the quadratus lumborum, or QL as it's often called, we're going to do a couple of easy stretches that you can easily do and see if it feels tight. So I'm going to ask you to look up the quadratus lumborum on the internet so you can get a better visual, but because it's hard to show this in video obviously. But the point is that you need to know how it feels. It's very deep into the side basically of your lower back, but it can be awkward to actually feel it when it gets stretched because it's a small muscle, so don't expect the same feeling as if you're stretching quads or hamstrings, which are really big muscles. So the first position is I'm going to sit here in a folded position, sit up straight, and then from here what you'll do is I'm going to use my left hand and push it all the way through towards my right side. Then with my right arm I'm going to go overhead. Now what you want to have is driving in opposing directions. So I'm going to keep pushing my left hand towards my right, while I'm going to keep reaching with my right hand overhead towards my left. And I'm going to lean into that. So it's from here, sitting up straight, and then going as far as you can. And then inhale, exhale, and reach further. Now what you shouldn't do is lean backwards or forwards. Try to sit as straight as possible and then fold sideways. So then you should feel a stretch here deep into the side. Showing it the opposite way, so my right hand pushes towards my left hand goes overhead towards my right. I inhale, sit up straight, and then push and drive both hands in opposite directions as I fold towards my right side. Like this. Hold, inhale, exhale, and go even further. And then I should feel it right here. If you're more comfortable, you can do this in a seated position on a chair, or if you're doing certain hamstring stretches, what you very often do here is in this split-like position, when you rotate towards the side and then try to do the same thing. For some people that works actually a lot better. So you try to go overhead with my left arm here and try to reach my toes, and I'm pushing my right hand here all the way inward towards my left leg. What you can do also is hook here. So try to grab your ankle or your calf muscle so that you can hold on a little bit better and then reach as far as you can overhead, trying to go with your left hand here as far as you can, like this. and relax and exhale, and you keep going further and further. Same thing on the other side. So left hand goes towards my right hand goes overhead, and you reach. So the point isn't necessarily, you're not looking for the hamstring stretch here as much, even though you might feel it, but you're looking for deep into your sides where you should feel the stretch. So reaching over and slowly exhaling. And as always, inhale, exhale, relax. And as you feel that the tension goes a little bit away, you go a little bit further. So again, the point is not the legs, the point is the QL muscle. Now moving on to a different one. This one is actually a lot more comfortable, and I'm going to show it to you sideways first. So what I'll do is I'll lie down like this, and the next thing I'm going to do is from here, just keep my feet together. So I'm just going to keep both feet together, and then I'll slowly let them go towards my left side at first. Now what you want to do here is, you'll feel it in the right side here, you should feel a little bit of a stretch. Leave your shoulders on the floor. If need be, straighten out your arms, grab a small dumbbell to keep them down, whatever you have to do, but that shoulder shouldn't move. Then from here, relax, breathe in, breathe out, and so on. And if you can't fall any lower than that, so the weight of my knees is keeping me down, but if that's as far as it goes, it's fine. What you often can do is then go a little bit deeper into the stretch by picking up your left leg, so my bottom leg in this case, and I'm placing it on top of that knee. That's going to give me more weight. And then I deeply relax as I exhale. And you let that knee go further still. And then you should start feeling a good stretch here deep in the side of your lower back. Now don't roll over. That's not it. So you stay flat on the floor and you let your knees do the work, and the weight of the bottom leg lying on top of that knee. That's what does the work. So then you slowly bring it back, you release the foot, slowly bring it back, and obviously you do both sides. From here, first just relax, let your knees fall naturally to the side, like they're doing here, and then from there you should feel a little bit of a stretch here in this area. Once you feel that, you can't really go much further, and that's usually because the weight of your legs isn't enough. So don't try to really grind all the way down and pull your knees to the floor. Just let them drop, relax, and then if you feel like that's the end position for now, just grab your bottom leg, place it on top of that knee, and you can cross your legs all the way if that's more comfortable for you. And then you inhale, exhale, and you just let it go even further still. And then you should get a nice stretch right here. Same thing. You breathe in, you breathe out. You hold first, and you relax as you exhale. And you go a little bit further. And you can go all the way down if you like. And usually what I would advise to clients is just lie here for like 20-30 seconds to let that QL relax a little bit. Because if from here you just jump right up into a seated position or immediately push yourself up, what can happen is that QL all of a sudden spasms if it's not used to being stretched, and if it's been tight, so it's going to want to revert back to that original position. You do not want that, because that can actually lock up your back and be quite painful. You don't necessarily damage the muscle, but if it spasms, trust me, you will know exactly where that muscle lies at that point. So that's the second exercise, and there's a third one that you can do. You can do it lying on the floor, but you can also, what works quite well, if you do it lying on a bed or on a table. The only caution that you need to take is don't fall off. So start on the floor and then maybe graduate to doing it on your bed. And if you don't have a bed handy, you can do it on a table. But you need to have a surface to lie on to begin with. So that's the goal. I'm lying in a straight line. You can put a pillow or something underneath your head here to relax, or you can put your hand here. It's all good. Now the first thing I'll do is, after I fully straighten out my legs and keep myself straight, I'm going to grab my top leg, keep it locked out, so my knee is completely straight, and I'm letting it drop here. And now I'm just relaxing it. It needs to hang down. And then and it is slightly at a diagonal angle. So let's say it's about, if this is a straight line towards my feet, it's maybe about 15, maybe 20 degrees out, not much further.
Now imagine in your head the line from your foot traveling all the way to your hip. You want to extend that line with your top arm and reach backwards as far as you can. Now it's better if I can relax into it, so what I like to do here is then either hold it here or lie down completely, and then I would have my head here on a pillow, and then from here what you'll do is reach and go extend that line. Now what you don't want to do is roll towards your left side. So you don't want to roll towards your shoulder, that's not it. That's the biggest mistake people make. What you want to have is extend that line from your foot towards your hand, same line. And then you will get a deep stretch here. And then you inhale, exhale, and go further. And you'll notice that your foot will want to come up, like I showed you here. So that is why it is good if you can do it, if you just do it on the edge of your bed, where this foot can hang in empty space, basically. So you don't want to be all the way over the edge so that you can fall off easily. You back up a little bit. There's a little bit of room here before I hit the edge of the bed. And I can use my hand to grip the bed if I want to here with my right hand. And then this leg will actually be lower than this. So I can't go through the floor here. But if you are lying on a bed, this leg here, the top leg would be lower. That's automatically going to give you a better stretch. And it's also going to make it easier to keep your leg from rising in this position, which is going to nullify the stretch because it will actually tighten up the QL as well. Another thing that you can do if you're lying down is you can grab the top here of your top leg and pull it down, hook it down a little bit. You don't have to do it hard, just a little bit of tension so it doesn't move. And then you can keep going this way again. So diagonal line. Now I'm going to try to show it to you guys here from a really bizarre angle. I want to have a straight line here from foot all the way up to my head here. That is a key point. The thing that you want to do then next is here the top leg is just going to come out a little bit and I'm dropping it. And again, I like to either support my head, you can lie down like this or put a pillow underneath my head. Now I want you to picture the line from my right foot through my knee all the way to my hip. And now what I'll do is I'm just going to extend that line with my arm and reach. Now the wall is in my way, I should be able to go lower, but then you won't see it well on the video. So you have to bring this down as much as possible. Don't bring this up, and now I'm going to do it wrong. Look at my right shoulder. Don't roll over to your side. That's not it. So I have to extend this imaginary line from my foot through my hips, through my arm, and go all the way back that way. If you look at my right shoulder here, there's a little bit of rotation, but I'm mostly trying to reach out behind me. And that is the goal that you want to have. So this is a stretch that you can easily do if you just relax into it. If the QL is tight with you, you'll definitely feel it. So if it's really tight, be very, very gentle with this stretch because you will feel it, and if it's sore, the muscle will let you know that you push too hard. This is one more exercise that we're going to do for mobility and pretty much bring everything together what we did before for lower body and the core region of your body. This is in part stretching, it's in part mobility, it's in part strengthening, but it is also coordination. So that's why I say that it brings everything together. What we're going to do is do the hip hinge. Now the hip hinge means that your hip needs to act like a hinge of a door, for instance. So it needs to do that function. Why is that important? Well, for instance, every single time that you throw a knee strike or you pick your leg up to kick or something along those lines, what you will do is, in this position, use your hip as a hinge. That means that this is the part that moves, my leg moves, and in this case, my upper body needs to be stable. And I kick or I pick up, now I need to strike and so on, or to block a kick, whatever. If this part if the hip hinge doesn't work correctly, this will compensate. You see this with beginners a lot, and also with people who, as time went by, developed deficiencies in strength, in flexibility, and so on. So what you see then is that instead of hinging at the hip, as they pick up the knee, if you look at my lower back and my right knee, is they start bending the knee
to compensate, and rounding off the lower back to chamber that kick. And then the back is going to take a beating because it's doing work that it shouldn't do. The hip needs to do that. When you punch, when you strike, it's the same thing. My hip is now going to rotate forwards and backwards. So if I throw a right punch here or whatever technique, is my left leg is, when you compare it to a door hinge, this is the side of the wall. That is going to be my lead leg. My hip is the hinge, and my right side of my hip is the part where the doorknob is, and that's going to swing open and closed. So this needs to be stable, and this needs to be flexible and hinge correctly. So that's why developing a good hip hinge is critical, because the better that hinge does its work, the easier and the better you will be performing your techniques. But it's very easy to make mistakes there. So here's an exercise we can do. So we start with, I'll show it this way first, with our feet about shoulder width apart, and they have to be parallel. That's where you start. Gonna grab a regular broomstick is fine, or whatever you can find is fine. It doesn't have to be heavy at all. You just need something to grab on. I like to use a wide grip, but you can do a narrow grip, whatever works for you. But once you grab it, I'd like you to lock out your elbows. You don't have to squeeze your muscles, just lock out the elbows. So it's a little bit stiff here, and that is actually going to help the exercise when it comes to the part that the spine has to do. So I'm going to step back a little bit, step into my stance, and here I am going to make sure that my feet are parallel and that they're pointing slightly towards the floor, that they're pointing forward, sorry. So standing up straight, and the first thing you do is stand up straight correctly. Imagine that there's a cord here, like a puppet on a string. Somebody pulls it, and it pulls you in an upright position. An additional thing you can do is stand up on your toes and then lower yourself back down. Stand up on your toes, lower yourself back down, and you'll feel all sorts of tension changes normally, and then you're standing up straight. Then bring the stick into an overhead position and lock out the elbows. It's going to give a little bit more tension in your abs and your lower back, and that's what we want. And then what I'll do is, I'm not going to move my knees. You want your knees and your shin bones not to move. You want your hips, your buttocks to move backwards as you lean forward. Inhale, exhale, and slowly start to descend forward with your arms and your upper body, and keep pushing your hips back as far as you can. Don't collapse, don't run off the back. What you want to make sure is that the spine doesn't fold to compensate. You want to keep it straight. You don't want to arch backwards. You don't want to create this big arc here in your back that is going to put pressure on the spine. It's not what we want. We just want to make sure that everything is nice and neutral and tight, and that the muscles both stretch and strengthen at the same time, and you develop that hip hinge correctly. Once again, feet parallel, standing up straight, push overhead. Inhale. Exhale, push your hips back, let your hands go forward. You can pause here, inhale again, and push again. And one more time, inhale, exhale, and then use your hamstrings and your glutes to get back up. So my back doesn't pull. I'm using just the leg muscles to bring myself back into an upright position and straighten out. So when you're in this lowered position, don't do this. Don't start rising out of it by pulling your head up. What you want to do is use your glutes, use your hamstrings and your glutes to kind of like when a fisherman, he casts the rod, there's a fish that bites and he pulls everything back. So there's a lot of leverage, there's a lot of weight over here, and the leverage is here at the bottom, and you pull to bring it back. The arms pulling, that's the hamstrings and the glutes doing the work. The top part doesn't bend forward. So there's no leverage here. All the force is generated here below. All the force to stand up is generated here. It's not generated here, not here, nothing. So that's the whole key of the exercise. If you can do 10 reps of this without sweating and raising your heartbeat, you're in pretty awesome shape. So this is hard if you do it at the pace I just showed, so slowly. If you can only do 1 or 2 reps, it's fine. Just do it at the end of all the previous work with it. You can do this afterwards when everything's nice and loose, and then you just work on connecting everything. If suddenly your back cramps up because the muscles are going like, whoa, what's going on here? All of a sudden we have to do all this work. That's normal. Stop and maybe try again next time. So again, consistent practice and progressive as opposed to going all the way right away. Because we are used to putting a lot of strength in forward-going movements. Every time you strike, you hook, you punch a guy, or you push him away from you, or you block and you parry, there's all outward-going movements. They're going away from me. So that's a lot of the muscles here that are very strong. And as a result, what often happens is that the shoulder blade starts moving a little bit too much, and it has a hard time connecting correctly again, sticking to the ribs. And that's the function of the shoulder blade. That creates problems in your shoulder muscles actually in the long run, and also in your spine. The biggest key is that it comes gradually and that you only feel it when it starts to hurt usually. And it's until you start doing some of the stuff that I'm going to show you now, that you'll actually feel how tight that your shoulder blades actually are, and how messed up all the structures in your back are. If you can do these exercises easily, that is great. But I've noticed that especially with men, this is a very, very big problem. In particular, if you do a lot of strength training, whether it's with weights, whether it's body weight training, doesn't matter. This happens a lot. So first things first, you need to learn how to grip with the shoulder blades. Stick them to your ribs and try to retract them and pull them into your body instead of having them winged forward. This is the typical problem. I'm sitting up straight here, and what you see a lot of men have is this posture here. So this is blading out the shoulder blades, pushing them out. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but they have this rounded off posture. What's going to happen next is that your body will want to do this. And especially if you have a sedentary job where you're doing office work or you're sitting a lot, this posture gets worse. So we need to open that all up, but just pulling yourself up high isn't enough. You then need to retract the shoulder blades. So the best way to practice this is, I like to do it seated down, but you can do it standing anytime you like. So just let your arms relax, sit up straight. First thing you do is hunch your shoulders up. Don't bring your head forward. Hunch your shoulders up, pull your shoulders back, and from that back position, pull them down. And you'll feel tension in your upper back now. That's just the muscles that are pulling on the shoulder blades. That's the tension you want to hold. So I'm moving my hands now, but if you look at my shoulder position, it hasn't moved. So once again, round it off. This is wrong. So first thing, all the way up, all the way back, all the way down. And this locks the shoulder blades into position. If you look at my shoulders now, compared to where we started, this is the correct position, this is wrong. This is what allows your arms to function correctly. And actually you have a lot of leverage here. You're pretty strong in this position. So a little bit sideways so you can see it better. So from here, rounded off posture, my back is sticking out, this is wrong. So first sit up straight, all the way up, all the way back, all the way down. And you see the difference in posture that I have right now with my shoulder blades, but the rest of my spine is involved in that as well. So pull this back and notice how it feels when you have that tension. That feeling of contracting those muscles consciously is what you're training here. So you're trying to teach your brain like, hey, this is what I want my shoulder blades to do. So notice that my shoulders haven't moved while I'm talking. Now I'm going to relax it and see how my posture is changing if I just relax and let this collapse. So without the whole three-part thing, I can just sit up straight and pull everything back right away if I know how to do that. Now don't do this. Don't pull your whole back over backwards. That's not the goal. That's why I like you to do it seated down, because then you'll feel this better. So sit up straight, up, back, down. That's it. So it's only my shoulders moving. My spine isn't moving. This is something you need to practice a lot, so it becomes second nature, that you automatically know how to position the shoulder blades correctly. This might feel really, really difficult at first. Don't worry about it, just keep practicing, you'll get there eventually. especially with the other exercises that I will show you. Here's another exercise for the shoulder blades. For this one, it's very easy. You can use the broomstick again, or you can do it without. So what we're going to do is lie down first. You need to be flat on your back like this and just straighten out. Now the next thing you're going to do is do the hands up position as if somebody pulls a gun at you in the movies. And then you want to rotate your hands back and pull them into the floor. What I want to have is that my elbows and my hands touch the floor. And then I'm going to try to push them as far possible as I can and then slide them all the way back. So I'm cheating a little bit. I had shoulder surgery not that long ago, so I can't really do it like I should show you, because that's, well, you know, my injuries. So bring it back and then extend, trying to keep your hands and elbows sticking to the floor as hard as you can. Inhale when you reach the end and push again, and exhale and bring it back. So it's this sawing motion that you're doing, coming all the way back. If you see what I'm doing here, so I'm bending my wrist, try to avoid that. Now usually you do it with your legs straight. You can start also with your knees bent, and that's going to push your lower back a little bit more into the floor. That's fine as well. So push your hands down, inhale, exhale. If you feel you're stuck, stay there. Inhale, exhale, and go further. And then you slide back and you repeat as necessary. It's going to feel very tight in your shoulder blades at first. And you often get the feeling like it's never going to get better. Don't worry about that, just keep pushing. It's just that because of the structures that are there, it doesn't feel like it will ever be able to move fluidly. It can, but it takes a lot of time and work if those muscles are really tight. You can do the same thing now with a stick. I'm gonna put the stick on the floor and try to slide it away from me without bringing it up. So you bring it almost touching your head here. Inhale, exhale, and push and reach. And keep pushing, don't just hold it and let it come back, but keep exhale and really drive as far as you can. Once you feel that you've reached the limit, inhale again, exhale, and just half an inch more if you can without raising your hands. And then keep your hands on the floor so the stick doesn't rise as you pull it back. So that's the variation with the stick. So this works really well, but it is very difficult at first. The reason why you have to keep your hands on the floor is because then you're pushing them down as you extend the arms. This means that the shoulder blades will have to do more work. Now, this is the easy version. So what I'm going to do is from here, flip over on my stomach and just lie down. I don't like to turn my head all that much. I like to keep it here. So I'm just going to adjust my t-shirt so the mic doesn't get squished. Okay, like this. And then I'll do the same thing. So don't rise up high. Stay low. Just this is my forehead touching the ground. I'm just going to pick it back up again and then I'm fine. Hands up position. Squeeze the shoulder blades tight. And then inhale. Exhale. And go as far as you can and keep reaching. Don't look up. Keep your head neutral. And then bring it back. And this you do 4 reps. Now what you'll notice that the further out you go, the more you want to put your hands down. Don't do it. You have to keep your hands up. So all the way, extend, exhale and reach with your fingertips. Keep reaching and bring it back. Again, if you can do 10 reps of this without, your heart rate even raising up, that's going to be quite impressive. Now, we can do the same thing with the stick. It's a little bit more difficult. If you have very light weights, like half a pound or something, or a pound, if you can handle it, that works as well. But I like a stick because it really locks out the arms and you'll immediately feel when you cheat. So, depending on how flexible you are already in the shoulder blades and how controlled they are, you can do a narrow grip or a wider grip. I'll start with a wide grip. So, lie down,
head touches the floor, pick it up a little bit, and then put your cervical spine in neutral. Bend your arms and don't drop your elbows, don't lever them up. Keep your elbows in line with your hands. Don't hit yourself in the face, obviously, with that broomstick. Inhale, exhale, and lift. So it's forward and up at the same time. It's not either or, it's both at the same time. So keep it as high as you can and then bring it back. Just underneath. All the way and back. So that is going to be a really difficult exercise at first because it not only takes mobility in the shoulder blades but a lot of strength for relatively small muscles to get this done. The main thing is that you have to stick with it. At first it usually feels like there's no way I can do this, it's never going to get better. That's typically the kind of feeling. It's very different from other kinds of strength training or mobility drills that you do. Especially if you're a man, if you've done a lot of strength training, you're strong. Not always, but in many cases with martial artists, what I've seen is that just the shoulder blades are completely messed up. I had the same problem, so you have to work on regaining mobility. There are huge health benefits to this as well. When your shoulder blades work correctly, your thoracic spine will work better, your shoulders will function better, and so on and so on. You can actually even breathe better if you do it right. I'm going to show you some exercises for the thoracic spine to regain mobility in that area. It can have a huge effect on everything when it comes to martial arts, and in particular how you use your shoulders. So we're going to start with a very easy exercise to do, but there's a critical mistake people make, and I'll show that first. So it's called the helicopter series, and the idea is that you put your hands on top of your head like this, and you're going to sit up straight first. Now, I can do it like this, or what I prefer when you do it the first time, go sit on the edge of your seat or your chair or wherever you are. So you need to be very much in a stable position. I've got my knees at about 90 degrees and I'm sitting up straight as I can be. Again, you pull that imaginary cord, sit up straight, keep that spinal alignment, hands on top of the head, and then you're going to flex into, in this case, the right ribs, in the middle of my rib cage. So, and the mistake that people make is that they lean to the side. Now what you see here is that my entire spinal column is making a bend here, and it's leaning off to the side. What I want to have is that the lower portion of my spine, so the lumbar spine, doesn't move, or moves as little as possible. That all the movement is in the middle part. So I'm going to, from here, try to squeeze the side of my ribs together. So I should feel it right here. You're not leaning. See, this is leaning, this is wrong, and this is right. So I'm squeezing into it as if I'm doing a side crunch in power training or strength training, as I'm lying on my side and working my obliques. And that's a similar sensation in a way, with the difference that if you do it right, what you will feel is that now as I squeeze and try to lower my upper body and bend the thoracic spine sideways, that you might feel this pinching or uncomfortable sensation here in the middle of the ribs. It's because you're twisting sideways with the thoracic spine vertebrae, and that kind of crunches the ribs together a little bit. You shouldn't feel pain, but it might be uncomfortable. So I'm going to do that. Inhale, exhale, inhale, come up. Same thing, I turn about 10-15 degrees. Inhale, exhale, and flex sideways. Inhale, exhale, and come up. Every time you come up, check your posture to see if you're sitting straight, because you will want to slouch. So I'm going to turn again about 10-15 degrees, maybe a little bit more. Inhale, exhale, into the ribs. Inhale, exhale, and come out of it. And then one more. And this is about the end of my range of motion in my spine. So inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, and come out of it. Notice that I'm doing this in 3 phases, so just pointing my elbows to the side, first turn, second turn, third turn, but I never come back. So I'm always staying where I'm at in the level of rotation. I'm going sideways, first turn, second turn, third turn, and after I finish coming back from the third turn, that's when I just release and come back forward. Do this slowly, do this in a relaxed fashion, especially if you're not used to it. It might take a while to get comfortable just bending the thoracic spine sideways. If you're not sitting comfortable here at the edge of your seat, I'd rather you just go back into the back of the chair and support your lower spine a little bit, but don't try to lean backwards, because then it won't have the same effect. Now, we're going to do the same thing, but on the other side, obviously, and after you've done that, we can do it in kind of a seesaw action. So what you'll do here, and I'm going to sit up really straight so you can see well. So same starting position. I'm going to go right, exhale, inhale, and all the way to the other side to the left. Inhale, exhale, and come back. Then I'm going to turn my 10 to 15 degrees. Inhale, exhale, I'm bending to the right. And I'm staying at this angle of rotation. I'm just going to inhale, come back up as I exhale, and then go to the left in that same angle of rotation, just on the opposite side. Inhale, exhale, come up to neutral. And then I do the second turn. Once again, going to the right first, inhaling and exhaling as I descend, inhaling down, exhaling as I come up, and then all the way over to the other side, and then come back up again. And then you repeat the same thing 3 turns, and after the third turn, you should be at your maximum. Don't strain. If you're straining to do that last rotation, it's too much. You shouldn't strain. Don't force your vertebrae. You will not like what happens when you do that. Try to just go gently from one side to the other. It's kind of like a seesaw, balancing from the left to the right, and then you rotate it, the plank that is on top of it, and then you go left, right, you rotate it again and go left and right. So that's the idea. So we're going to work with the foam roller again this time for the extension and the flexion. So the spine, first we did sideways bending, now we're going to go forward and backwards. So what you do is you put your foam roller on the floor. There's different ways of starting. I like to start high. So what I'll do is lie down, and I'm going to go high to pretty much the top of my thoracic spine. It depends a little bit on how flexible you are and how you can move best, but what I like to do is lie down here, and then the next part what you'll do is you're going to support your neck so that it doesn't have to strain. Just bring your fingers together and then simply hold up your head like this. So I'm putting my fingers in the back of my head, I'm going to bend my elbows upwards so that I have good support, I don't have to use too much muscle. Now what you're going to do here now is inhale, exhale, and just bring your head down below. So you're not straining, you're just letting it drop. This won't be a big movement, so I won't be able to do much here. I'm going to inhale again, exhale, and then sort of crunch upwards and flex all the way up. Then I'm going to use my heels to push myself an inch or two upwards across the floor, and you can see that I've moved up a little bit. So what I'm creating is a lever that is a little bit longer when you look at the fulcrum that is the foam roller. So what you want to do is make sure that as you do this, you make small advances, always going to from one vertebrae to the next, or maybe from 2 vertebrae to the next 2, but you never want to make a huge change as you roll upwards. So same thing, so I'm going to inhale, exhale, and relax into it. And you stay here, and here in this low position, you inhale again, exhale and come up, and you crunch. I'm not pulling on my arms, so I'm not yanking my head upwards with my elbows. I'm just crunching and flexing that spine. And from here, again, push yourself a little bit upwards on your heels, just a touch. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, and so on. And you would keep going increment by increment until I'm about here, which is pretty much the lower part of my thoracic spine. And what will happen is that if you look at the difference from this position, if you look at where the foam roller is touching my back, this is where I end up, and this is where I started. So you can see that the fulcrum that is created by the foam roller, there's not a lot of weight here to begin with. But if I go all the way down, step by step, here there's a lot more weight. So there's going to be a lot more, an extension here in the lowest vertebrae of the thoracic spine. So that's why you always do this careful, because you're actually stretching quite hard. Now what you might feel is that as you do this, you're going to feel a lot of pulling here up front. That's perfectly normal. All the tissues and the connective tissue and so on, all the structures here can be quite tense because of that rounded off fixated part of the thoracic spine if you have that issue. So it's okay to feel it here, just relax, breathe. If it doesn't feel good, it might be that you're that there's some tension that's created on the solar plexus, plexi I have to say, because it's multiple ones. Long explanation short, there's a lot of nerves here, and if you squeeze on them, because everything is tight here, it really doesn't feel good, because they power your, I shouldn't say power, they're connected to your organs, and that's a very uncomfortable feeling when they get messed up. So it's okay if you feel that it's pulling here, but if you feel nauseous or not good, stop right away and just back off and maybe try again next time. So this is the furthest point that I can go. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to keep my elbows tight. Inhale, exhale. And you can see that I can go much, much slower now. So now I have a really good stretch in my lumbar spine. And I'm going to inhale here as I stay low. Exhale. So what is important to know is that this isn't an abdominal workout. It's not supposed to be. You're stretching your vertebrae. You're not trying to strengthen your abs. So don't do this for reps. Do not do that. The goal is to make if I'm sitting like this and my thoracic spine is one on top of the other, what you want to do is flex forward and backwards. Loosen up the vertebrae individually. So that's why I like to start with 45 phases from beginning to end, and maybe once I'm comfortable with that, do it in 6 to 7 steps, going from all the way up to the top to all the way to the bottom, and just slowly see what works best for you. Make small increments as opposed to large jumps from the top to the bottom part, and use the breathing well. Inhale, exhale, and then always slowly come up, slowly come down. This can be quite tricky. If you have a slouching posture, this can actually be something that you feel a lot. With all thoracic spine mobility work that we will do, expect to be a little bit sore the day after, because these are very small ligaments and muscles and tendons that are actually being moved a lot, and maybe they haven't moved like that in years. So they might react with a little bit of soreness the day after. So the last plane of movement that we need to address now is rotation. So what we'll do is use a neck support again. You can use this kind of yoga pillow, you can use roll-up towel, doesn't really matter. I'm going to use the foam roller as well. I'm going to start by lying on my left side. From here, what you want is, as before, you want a straight line from your feet through your body all the way to your head. I want to bring this back, and then I'm going to lie down. The reason why you do this is that so your neck vertebrae can relax, so they don't fight the movement that you're doing. Now what I'll do then is bring my top leg over onto the foam roller, and I try to have it in about a 90-degree angle. And then I'm going to use my bottom hand and hook behind the bend of the knee to make sure that this leg doesn't move. This makes sure that my hips don't start rotating, so my lower spine doesn't compensate for what I'm trying to do when it comes to rotating. So that's why you make sure that you need to be in the right position before you start. Now, I'll show it this way first, and I'm going to show you the way that I like to do it and think is more effective. So what you're going to do here is put your hand here lying on the floor. You inhale, then you exhale. Bring your hand across, roll backwards with your upper body, and go as far as you can without straining. And then you inhale again, exhale, and you come all the way back. You need to come all the way back. Don't skimp and just do half movements. You have to do it all the way. So that's how you would continue, and you would do this 10 times, each time trying to go a little bit further. So inhale, straight, locked out elbow. You exhale on the way over, and I'm naturally letting my head turn over to the other side. And you can see that I'm going a little bit further already. And you inhale at this position, and you exhale, and you come back. So what you can do is, as you do this movement 10 times, after about 5-6 times, you should be a lot further than the first time, and then you can hold it there maybe for a few seconds. But you shouldn't try to strain. Always do it relaxed, because there's no point in forcing this. So what I'll do then, and this is the way I prefer to do it, so you don't have to. You can start with the hooking if your leg moves a lot, but I think it's more interesting if you can do the correct hand clap. So I'm straightening up my bottom hand, my bottom arm here, and I'm bringing both hands together as if I'm clapping. So this makes sure that I'm lying well on my side here, as I should. Notice that my shoulder is pointing straight to the ceiling, so I'm not cheating by already leaning backwards and in half a rotation. So from here, I'm going to lock out both arms. I'm going to inhale again, exhale, and rotate. And this is a fluid movement, and my head follows naturally. And you come back, inhaling and then exhaling as you come back. Once again, inhale, rotate. Now, if you notice that your knee comes up, it's okay, just relax. The main thing you want to do is, as that knee comes up, don't rotate with your hips, because then you won't have the same stretching effect that you're looking for. So you would do this 10 times left and 10 times right. Very, very slowly, very relaxed. If you feel as you're doing it that it crackles and pops and makes a lot of noise, it shouldn't hurt, but it can make a lot of noise. Or you can feel that it's very stiff, but it doesn't hurt. Be gentle, take your time with it, and just keep going, and then you stop. And then what I advise is that before you stand up, just from here, bend both knees. So I'll put this out of the way so you can see it better. So I'm going to bend both knees, bring my feet together, rotate. So I'm lying on my back, and then just relax for a little bit. And now all the tissues in my thoracic spine, the tendons, the muscles, and so on, they can relax a little bit before I try to get up. So I'm going to show this at a different angle so you can see it a little bit better. So I'll show it like this. Should be easy to view. So I'm lying off to my side. I'm trying to make sure that I have as straight a line as possible from my feet all the way to my head. I'm going to try to bring up that leg in a 90-degree angle and just relax. You don't have to pick up the foot, you can relax it. You can hook, or what I prefer to do is straighten out the bottom arm, and it's also in a 90-degree angle in relation to my spine. Clap both hands together and then inhale, exhale and rotate. And you go all the way. Now, you start high, and bit by bit, with every rep, you try to go maybe half an inch further. And then you come back, inhale, and you go first still. It could be that you can also feel it here in your ribs pulling. All that is fine. Your body will let you know where it is most stiff. And just keep going like that 10 times. And the 10th time you try to hold it a little bit, inhale, exhale, relax into the movement, and then come back again. So that is rotation for the thoracic spine.
Now, when you do martial arts, you do a lot of rotation. There's a lot of movements where you rotate to parry and block. When you're striking, you've got a lot of rotation as well. What often happens is that people always focus on the lumbar spine and the hips, but they forget that the thoracic spine is actually where all that power has to be transferred to, so it comes into your arms or whatever your hands are doing. So that's why that mobility is so important. Be gentle with this, take your time, do not force it, because you will not like what happens when you try to force through a stretch in your spine. Here's an exercise for the shoulders that is pretty much multi-purpose. It's going to target several things at the same time. It's going to mainly focus on the rotator cuff, which is a series of muscles that are on the inside of the shoulder that stabilize it. It's part strengthening them, but a part also teaching them mobility. What I want you to do is do the shoulder blade exercises first before you do this, because the rotator cuff issues that often develop with people are sometimes related, or I would say apparently very often related, to shoulder blade issues. So make sure you work on the shoulder blades and then do these first. You can also do them in sequence, shoulder blades followed by this. So that's not a bad idea either. So I'll show them to you first sideways. You're going to assume the hip hinge position again. So you're going to hip hinge backwards, but this time don't go as far backwards. And you can bend your knees a little bit more if you like. The main purpose is to be in a stable position with your spine more or less horizontal. It's okay if it's not perfectly horizontal, but you need to be able to hold this position comfortably. Use your hamstrings and your glutes to get there, and suck in your abs a little bit as you do that. Now, you start by relaxing your arms and then bring the shoulder blades in position. Remember, up, back, down, same thing, but this time I am in an inclined position with my spine, but it's the same muscles. So that's first. Then I'm going to start with elevating my elbows off to the side as high as I can without using my spine to get them there. So it's just arm movement, that's it. Then rotate your hands as high as you can backwards without dropping the elbows. Next, don't drop your elbows and rotate your hands all the way up forward and high, and then bring them back, and then you come back down again. This is 1 rep. So you do 3, 4, 5, 10, doesn't matter. Do as many as you can comfortably do while maintaining this good position here, using the hamstrings, the glutes, and keeping your spine straight. If your spine starts to move, then it's no good. So start with expanding to the side, pulling back the elbows, rotating all the way backwards, rotating all the way forwards, and bringing it back down, and then lowering it. If you stand up when you're done, use your legs to do so. The main point is, again, doing this slowly and in a controlled fashion, so you teach the shoulders on the inside that they can actually move through this large range of motion without problem. So do it in a relaxed fashion, so you make sure that you don't force through anything that is a little bit tight. Put the shoulder blades in position, and then elbows off to the side as high as I can keep them. I'm going to go backwards without dropping the elbows. Then I'm going to rotate them forward without dropping the elbows. I'm going to rotate them to neutral again, and then I bring everything down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Again, that is 1 rep. So you do start with 3 to 4 reps, and then you rest, and then you do a couple of sets like that. So start with that exercise. It's a great warm-up also before you practice. Do 1 or 2 sets of 3 to 4 reps as a warm-up when you train. It's going to loosen up your shoulders tremendously. For this next exercise, we're going to use a kettlebell. You can use a dumbbell or whatever weight you can comfortably hold, but I like this one. It's about 12 pounds. That's more than enough. We're not going to strength train. That's not the goal. We need a weight to get the job done, but we don't use it to build massive shoulders or anything. There's no upside in making this heavy. So because this is a relatively narrow handle. I use 2 fingers. If you use a dumbbell, you can get both your hands maybe to hold on to it. Whatever you have, use it, it's fine. I prefer not to use a long barbell because that tends to become an issue with balancing it as it's going to start going up and down. So a regular dumbbell or a kettlebell that is relatively light, that would be perfect. So what I'm going to do is hook both hands like this and keep it behind my back. So I'm going to do it like this. Then first thing, again, imagine that cord on top of your head, somebody pulls it and you stand up straight. That's the first thing you do. And then from here, shoulders up, back, down, and find that tension in the shoulder blades to keep everything low. Now from here, I don't want to move anything anymore. If it helps, tighten up your quads and your hamstrings to keep everything nice and tight so your body doesn't move. The only thing I do is from here, pull up that weight behind me and bring it back down. Put it up by bending my elbows and bring it down. If you notice that you want to lean forward or you want to lean backwards to compensate, it's too high. So you only go as high as you can by, from here, lifting your hands up by bending the elbows, but you don't go higher than that. And this is about the right rhythm. Just keep going like this, up and down. Because the weight isn't heavy, that you shouldn't tire out as much, but you should feel a strong pull here on the front side of your shoulder, and it's going to open up everything here. So that's going to increase mobility, not just in your shoulder girdle, but also in the chest here up front, because everything gets pulled back and you're teaching the muscles in back that actually can keep your shoulders open to be active again if you've had a little bit of a slouching posture or have a sedentary job. Then those muscles aren't used to working anymore. So with all the mobility work we're doing for the shoulders and the rest of the body, you also need to teach those muscles to be active again, just in holding your posture correctly. This can be a little bit tight at first. That's why, once again, you go slow, relaxed, in a progressive manner, and bit by bit you'll regain mobility. A similar exercise to the one with the kettlebell is using the elastic band. It's pretty much the same deal, but instead of lifting, we're going to extend to the side. So the whole point is, once again, this isn't strength training. This is teaching your body that you can actually function with the shoulders pulled back again in their normal position, as opposed to the rolled forward position that we often have as martial artists. So it doesn't matter how strong you make the resistance. So I have it folded in half. I'm going to grab 2 halves here, and I am about, let's say, a little bit less than hip width apart with my grip. So that's what I like to start with. You do that behind your back as before. Okay, I'm going to rotate sideways so you can see better, but the main thing you're doing is, once again, start correctly. So make sure you have a good stance here. Lock out your knees if you like, but pull again the imaginary string on top of your head. Everything goes straight. Shoulder blades in position, and now lock out the elbows. And you'll feel a little bit of tension already. And I'm not only locking out the elbows, I'm pushing my hands down at the same time. So my shoulder blades are pulling down as I'm doing this. And then I'm going to pull my hands apart a few inches like this. And nothing moves, nothing should move except my hands. So it's a relatively short range of motion. So if I do it this way, this is the starting position. So I'm going to relax first, take the grip, stand up straight, shoulders up, back, down. Punch down with your fists so your elbows are locked out. There's tension already here. Stand up straight and then sideways and back. So you hold it for about a second at the extension, and then you let it come back. So there's limited range of motion. You don't have to go all the way up high. This is more than enough. So that is going to teach your body the same thing, that those rounded off shoulders aren't necessary. You can pull everything back and keep it there and then function from that position. So it's going to open up the chest if it's tight, it's going to open up the shoulders if they're tight, and teach your body to keep it there at the same time. Again, gradually, progressively do these exercises. Don't force it. Because as your posture opens up, if
it was too much forward. Your body then has to figure out how to use that increased mobility again. So there's going to be small adaptations happening in your nervous system, and your body is trying to find out how it can coordinate everything again after maybe years of being too tight in one spot. So that's why you do this slow. This exercise is a little bit different. It is going to work in a different manner than the previous ones. It's not as such mobility per se, though it is a part of it, but it is more fine-tuning of the way your shoulder joint works. The way it works is I'm going to use my chair, but I like to do it actually on a table, but I can't drag a table in the studio. So what I'm going to do is show it to you on this chair, but the way it works best if you have your hand fully flat on a surface. So I can't do that here, so you'll see my hand move, but you should have it fully flat on the surface, and you want to have your full hand on it. So not half, not the front half, but just here, the bottom of the palm of the hand, everything. The only thing that you're not using to touch is the wrist itself. So the bones of the forearm don't make contact, but your hand needs to be fully flat on the surface. That gives the best results. So you do this one arm at a time. What I'm going to do is stand close to the table or the chair in this case, and I'm locking out my elbow, not straining. The only thing I want is a locked out elbow, so there's no wiggle room. Then I'm going to push, let's say with about 20% strength into the table with my arm. I'm not leaning, I'm not using my whole body weight, but I'm simply pushing with about 20% strength. Throughout the exercise, you keep doing that. You never let go with the downward pressure. Even if the angle of my arm changes, I'm always pressing straight down into the floor through the table or whatever I'm using. So from here, a little bit of a push, and then you walk backwards as far as you can and try to get to horizontal. And I'm still pushing. And at this point, it's too small for me to adjust with steps. So I'm going to just lean a little bit into it, and I'm trying to open up the shoulder completely. I'm still pushing down, and then I'm going to keep pushing and walk myself forward again. Very slowly, just walking forward. This is one rep. Start with 3 to 4 reps. So once again, pushing straight down, locking out the elbow, keep your spine straight, keep pushing downwards. As you step backwards, go as far as you can. Now, if I step backwards more now, I'm actually pushing forward to push myself in a backward, keep myself in balance. So that's why you need to stop at the right distance, so that you can keep pushing down as opposed to all of a sudden pushing away from you, because otherwise you're going to end up leaning and changing the exercise. So from here, I'm going to lean down, and don't bend in your lower back, don't use your hips. Keep everything neutral here, maybe tighten up the abs a little bit, and you have to feel it in the shoulder joint here and on top. So I'm going to inhale and then exhale and keep pushing and go as low as I can. And then here, keep pushing and very slowly walk yourself forward. And when you finish completely, you stand up and you relax a little bit. So this is going to help the shoulder joint just realign itself in a good position if it hasn't been in one for a while, or especially after all the work you did to loosen this up, so everything gets fine-tuned a little bit. So you save this one for last. Never straining, never going full force, never trying to think that you have to crush that chair or table. There's no need for that. About 20% strength, pushing vertical is more than enough. But you have to keep going with the strength until you finish each rep. So you have to start pushing, keep pushing all the way back, keep pushing all the way, you're going forward, and only when you stand up straight again, then you can relax and then you go again. Some people like to switch hands, do 1 rep on the right side, do 1 rep on the left side, and keep going that way. Whatever works for you, it's fine. But just do it slowly, and at the end position, when you're furthest back, try to sink into that shoulder joint and bring your body lower still, so you get the maximum of elongation
throughout all the structures that are involved with the shoulder joint and the lats and the triceps. Everything is going to get pulled and stretched and realigned. That's the whole goal. We've come to the end of this video. A couple of things that I want to say in conclusion. First of all, remember the principles I explained in the beginning. Go over them every now and then, because we tend to forget when we start practicing. Everybody's the same, you, me, everybody else. We tend to forget sometimes the most important things. So every now and then, rewatch the beginning of this video and see if you're still applying those principles consistently. Another point is this. As I mentioned in the beginning, the goal of this video is not to replace your regular training or stretching or mobility work. That was never the goal. The goal is to focus on very specific issues I see coming back over and over with martial artists, where the lack of mobility is creating a lot of problems, and sometimes you're not even aware of it until you start trying to do these exercises and notice that, wow, my shoulder blades are actually not mobile at all. I can't even lift my hand overhead. So all this is perfectly normal. Just do your best to keep a regular schedule of mobility and stretching work, and you are almost always going to make improvements. Which brings me to my other point. If you have a medical condition, if you have issues and so on, go see a doctor, a physical therapist, anybody, any medical professional who can actually help you with that. Do that first. We cannot fix with all the mobility work something that is already broken. That is never the goal. So you need to fix that first, or at the very least know what you're up against, and then your doctor can advise you to make sure that the mobility work you do practice is done so in a correct manner that is helpful for whatever issue you have, instead of actually harming it. So that is the second point. Also, what I want to make sure is that you pay special attention to what you're feeling. And this is very bizarre if you're not used to it, but a large part of mobility work and stretching is paying attention to how it feels to stretch and move through your body in a certain way, and actually trying to focus on the areas that are tense and giving you resistance in that exercise or movement. That means that you have to become very aware of what's going on inside your body. This takes some time if you're not used to it. This takes a special kind of concentration and focus, which is very different from all the things we do in martial arts. So you have to be aware of, in each exercise that you do, in each exercise and drill that you do, of what are you targeting, which muscles, which tendons, which joints, which structures are you working on, and then you focus your mental energy on those, as opposed to going through the motions. If all you do is going through the motions, you will get some benefit, but I would venture you maybe get 50% of what you could get out of these. And if you're going to do them anyway, might as well get the most out of it. So always be focused. Second reason why you do that is because it makes sure that if you do the exercises maybe a little bit too quickly and so on, you could get injured. By staying focused on the areas you're working on, the chance of injury is much, much lower. So always be mindful of what you're doing in these exercises. Now, as a final point, I mentioned this in the beginning, but I will restate it. Go to my webpage, wimdemeyer.com/mobility, and you will find links there to not only the products that I use here throughout the video, the different types of equipment, but I'll also put different kinds of videos on there with additional information and some other things that I think you might find interesting when it comes to training of mobility and stretching. Over time, I will gradually add content on that page again, so you might want to check in every now and then. With that said, I want to thank you for buying this video. I want to thank you for your support, and I wish you all the best in your training.